Miss City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Sanchez?
Here.
Councilmember Ibarra?
Here.
Councilmember Figueroa?
Here.
Councilmember Charette?
I'm here. Is Figueroa the council office? I don't see him.
That's who's missing.
Didn't he answer here?
I'm here.
Nickel?
Here.
Councilmember Richard is absent at the moment. Councilmember Mulvihill?
Here.
And Mayor Valdivia.
Present. Okay, thank you, Miss City Clerk. We'll go ahead and are there any public comments?
No, there are not any public comments.
Okay, no public comments noted for the closed session calendar. Let's get right into it. We'll excuse. Joint regular meeting of the Mayor and City Council. The Mayor and City Council acting as a successor agency to the redevelopment agency of the city of San Bernardino. I now hereby call to order the open session. And good evening, and we welcome you here tonight. At this time, I will ask Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez, would you please, sir, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
The United States.
of America, to the republic for which it stands,
One
nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez. We appreciate it, even though I think we heard Councilman Mulvihill.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to our city attorney's report. Is there anything to reported from closed session, Ms. City Attorney?
No, Mayor, members of the City Council, and for members of the public, we had quite a few cases on our closed session agenda this evening. All were discussed with either the City Attorney or outside legal counsel, but we do not have any reportable action on those items.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. City Attorney. We appreciate it. At this time, we'll move right into our public portions. Ms. Rocha, we understand there is approximately 21 recorded public comments, and at this time, we'll hand it over to our city clerk. Ms. City Clerk.
This comment is for open session dated August 5th, 2020. Honorable Mayor, Council, and staff, my name is Dr. Siraj, founder of ECS Labs and a microbusiness cannabis applicant. Before you tonight is the first reading of the revised cannabis ordinance. After reading the detailed agenda packet, the ordinance is missing an important business type identified by the Bureau of Cannabis Control as a non-storefront retail cannabis establishment. This is a retailer subtype with its own unique licensing requirements. The definition of a non-storefront retail establishment is a cannabis business that sells goods to consumers and customers exclusively through delivery. The premises of a non-storefront retailer shall not be open to the public. The state has strict regulations about the hours of operation, delivery mechanism, product packaging, labeling, exit packaging, shipment, inventory management, delivery tracking, and record keeping. It is obvious that COVID has forever changed the face of retail. We are ordering online at a feverish pace and having products delivered to us. Cannabis is no different. Non-storefront retail cannabis businesses with no public exposure mitigates risk of COVID. It mitigates risk of crime, public nuisance, and loitering, and addresses parking issues. Further, the city of San Bernardino is actively working on prohibiting illegal deliveries into the city, so allowing local non-storefront businesses to deliver cannabis products within the city into cities that don't prohibit deliveries will ensure the viability of the cannabis business and generate tax revenue for the city. The ordinance under consideration this evening will permit up to a maximum of 17 retail and micro business permits combined. It will allow for a limited number of permits for other business types, such as cultivation, distribution, testing, and manufacturing. However, please consider excluding non-storefront retailers and micro businesses with a non-storefront retail from the artificial cap of 17 licenses. This would allow us as ECS Labs to manufacture and deliver our own products to our patients. This would allow us to provide important counseling information directly to our patients and ensure the safety and integrity of our products. I have emailed the cannabis retailer non-storefront fact sheet from the Bureau of Cannabis Control to the city attorney. Thank you for your consideration.
For the record, that public comment was missed at the August 5th meeting, and that's why it's being played tonight. Moving on.
Hello, my name is Remy Goodman. I am a resident and registered voter here in San Bernardino County. I'm calling to leave a public comment regarding the inclusion of undocumented workers in regards to the 2020-2021 annual plan allocation of COVID-19 funds that we were receiving as a county from the CARES Act and the Emergency Solutions Grant. And basically, just what I wanted to comment was that these undocumented workers are providing essential services here in our county. They are very hardworking, honest people that contribute immensely to this county. Undocumented workers here fill those jobs in this county that most of our documented and legal residents will not take, and they do so for very little pay. They provide essential services such as working in the 100 to 110 degree heat in our fields to keep food in our stores and on our tables. They sanitize hospitals and medical facilities at risk of contracting COVID, and also serve as cooks and food providers in these kitchens of the facilities and medical areas as well. They are definitely essential workers. And while San Bernardino County may not be the largest in population, it is still one of the largest counties in California. Other counties really look to us as they develop their own policies, and therefore we have a responsibility that extends beyond our county and even our state to set the right precedent. I ask that you implement a working oversight committee to ensure that this budget is managed properly and that it is made public, and let the direct service providers administer eviction prevention rather than the housing authority. These essential workers, undocumented workers, provide essential services to this county. It is my hope that you will go further to protect these families that are in need. To deny these benefits, reality is unjust, inhumane, and just simply unappreciative of these great services that they continue to provide for us here in our county. Let's show them and the rest of the state that we are better than that. Please approve a fair and equal distribution of rent relief and eviction prevention from these COVID-19 relief funds for these undocumented workers who in the past have been previously excluded from receiving such benefits. Thank you for hearing my comment, and I appreciate your consideration.
Hello, my name is Amres, and I live in the city of San Bernardino. I am a resident, and I am also involved in a few youth organizations and also some environmental justice organizations. I'm taking action in regards to San Bernardino's amended 2021 annual plan and allocation of federal COVID-19 funding it has received. 2021 allows budgets allocated to various services and descriptions for what they are to be spent on. However, the lack of detail in regards to structure, framework, and specific processes does not speak to the level of accountability we expect of our city and its leaders. In addition, the Judicial Council's delay on processing eviction cases will cease on September 1st, meaning that our community members who are waiting for critical eviction prevention funds to be approved will be displaced before the application could be processed. We ask that you modify the language in our eviction moratorium to protect our families from becoming homeless while our eviction prevention programs are funded and put in place. We also ask to ensure that the process for rent relief and eviction prevention is fair, equitable, and efficient for immigrant families in our community who have been excluded from prior relief funding when in desperate need of support. We ask that you work with our community to implement a working oversight committee to maintain that the budget proposed in the city's annual plan is managed accordingly and is reported to the public. This would help ensure that our community's needs are being properly aided and give our city the statistical data to effectively adapt to our recovery moving forward. We also ask that the funding for the eviction prevention program be administered through our direct service providers as opposed to San Bernardino County's Housing Authority. The pandemic has hit our community hard, and the proposed eviction prevention program is a step in the right direction. It is our hope that you will go further to protect our families in need as we learn to navigate this pandemic in an effective and equitable manner. I'm a voter. Along with my friends and family, we are paying close attention to the way in which these funds will be allocated to help those in need. Thank you for taking the time to listen to your community.
Hi, my name is Christian Flores. I'm a community organizer and a resident of the First Ward. I work with ICUC in San Bernardino Generation Now. This is for the open meeting. I'm taking action in regards to San Bernardino's amended 2021 annual action plan and the allocation of federal funding received for COVID, addressing COVID and the pandemic in our city. The 2021 action plan has allocations for various services and descriptions for what they are to be spent on. However, the lack of detail in regards to specific structure, framework, and measurable timelines does not speak to the level of accountability we expect of our city and its leaders. In addition to the Judicial Council's delay on processing evictions, which we'll see September 1st, meaning that our community members who are waiting for critical eviction prevention funds to be approved will likely be displaced before their application could be processed. We ask that you modify the language in our eviction moratorium to protect our families from becoming homeless while our eviction prevention programs are funded and put in place. We ask that you ensure the process for rent relief and eviction prevention is fair, equitable, and efficient for immigrant families in our community who have been excluded from prior relief funding when in desperate need of support. And we ask that you work with our community to implement a working oversight committee to maintain that the budget proposed in the annual action plan is managed accordingly and reported to the public to ensure that our community's needs are being properly aided and give our city the statistical data to effectively adapt to our recovery moving forward. We also ask that the funding for the eviction prevention program be administered through our direct service providers as opposed to San Bernardino County's Housing Authority, since they are already doing the work. This pandemic has hit our community hard, and the proposed eviction prevention program is a step in the right direction. It is our hope that you'll go further to protect our families in need as we learn to navigate this pandemic in an effective and equitable manner. Thank you for taking the time to listen to your community. Again, my name is Christian Flores, and I'm a First Ward resident in San Bernardino.
Hello, my name is Fabian Torres, and I live in the city of San Bernardino. I am a student. I'm taking action in regard to San Bernardino's amended 2020 to 2021 annual action plan and the allocation of federal COVID-19 funding our city has received to address the pandemic in our city. The 2021 annual action plan has allocations for various services and descriptions for what they are to be spent on. However, the lack of detail in regards to specific structure, framework, and measurable timelines does not speak to the level of accountability we expect our city and its leaders. In addition, the Judicial Council's delay on processing eviction cases will see September 1st, meaning that our community members who are waiting for critical eviction prevention funds to be approved will likely be displaced before their application could be processed. We ask that you modify the language in our eviction moratorium to protect our families from becoming homeless while our eviction prevention programs are funded and put in place. We ask that you ensure that the process for rent relief and eviction prevention is fair, equitable, and efficient for immigrant families in our community who have been excluded from prior relief funding when in desperate need of support. We ask that you work with our community to implement a working oversight committee to maintain the budget proposed in the annual action plan is managed accordingly and reported to the public. to ensure that our community's needs are being properly aided and give our city the statistical data to effectively adapt to our recovery moving forward. We ask that the funding for the eviction prevention program be administered through our direct service providers who are already doing the work as opposed to San Bernardino County's Housing Authority. This pandemic has hit our community hard, and the proposed eviction prevention program is a step in the right direction. It is our hope that you will go further to protect our families in need as we learn to navigate this pandemic in an effective and equitable manner. I am a voter, and along with my friends and family, are paying close attention to the way in which these funds will be allocated to help those in need. Thank you for taking the time to listen to your community. Again, my name is Fabian Torres. I reside on the 5th Ward. Hopefully you guys make the right decision.
Hello, my name is Miriam Nieto. I live in the city of San Bernardino. I am a parent and a resident here in the 6th Ward. I am taking action in regards to San Bernardino's amended 2020-2021 annual action plan and the allocation of federal COVID-19 funding our city has received to address the pandemic in our city. The 2021 annual action plan has allocations for various services and descriptions for what they are to be spent on. However, the lack of detail in regards to specific structure, framework, and measurable timelines does not speak to the level of accountability we expect of our city and its leaders. In addition, the Judicial Council's delay on processing eviction cases will see September 1st, meaning that our community members for critical eviction prevention funds to be approved will likely be displaced before their application could be processed. We ask that you modify the language in our eviction moratorium to protect our families from becoming homeless while our eviction prevention programs are funded and put in place. We ask that you ensure that the process for rent relief and eviction prevention is fair, equitable, and efficient for immigrant families in our community who have been excluded from prior relief funding when in desperate need of support. We ask that you work with our community to implement a working oversight committee to maintain that the budget proposed in the annual action plan is managed accordingly and reported to the public to ensure that our community needs are being properly aided and give our city the statistical data to effectively adapt to our recovery moving forward. We ask that the funding for the eviction prevention program be administered through our direct service providers who are already doing the work as opposed to San Bernardino County's Housing Authority. This pandemic has hit our community hard, and the proposed eviction prevention program is a step in the right direction. It is our hope that you will go further to protect our families in need as we learn to navigate this pandemic in an effective and equitable manner. I am a voter, and along with my friends and family, we are paying close attention to the way in which these funds will be allocated to help those in need. Thank you for the time to listen to your community. My name is Miriam Nieto again. I am in 6th Ward. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Michael Segura, and I live in the 6th Ward in San Bernardino. I'm a student, parent, and community member, and I'm affiliated with Immigrant Congregation United for Change and San Bernardino Generation Now. I've done a lot of community work with those two groups within San Bernardino, volunteering my time. And I'm just calling in regards to San Bernardino's amended 2020-2021 annual action plan and the allocation of the federal COVID-19 funding our city has received to address the pandemic within our community. The 2021 annual action plan has allocations for various services and the description for what they are to be spent on. However, the lack of detail in regards to specific structure, framework, and measurable timelines does not speak to the level of accountability we expect of our city and its leaders. In addition, the Judicial Council's delay on processing eviction cases will cease September 1st, meaning that our community members who are waiting for critical eviction prevention funds to be approved will likely be displaced before their application could be processed.
We ask that you modify the language in our eviction moratorium to protect our families from becoming homeless while our eviction prevention programs are funded and put in place. We ask that you ensure that the process for rent relief and eviction prevention is fair, equitable, and efficient for immigrant families in our community who have been excluded from prior relief funding when in desperate need of support. We ask that you work with our community to implement a working oversight committee to maintain the budget proposed in the annual action plan and make sure it's managed accordingly and reported to the public to ensure that our community's needs are being properly aided, and give our city the statistical data to effectively adapt to our recovery moving forward. We ask that the funding for the eviction prevention program be administered through our direct service providers who are already doing the work here in our community, as opposed to San Bernardino County's Housing Authority. This pandemic has hit our community hard, and the proposed eviction prevention program is a step in the right direction. It is our hope that you will go further to protect our families in need as we learn to navigate this pandemic in an effective and equitable manner. I am a voter, and along with my friends and family, we are paying close attention to the way in which these funds will be allocated to help those in need. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Again, my name is Michael Segura, and I'm in the 6th Ward.
Hello, my name is Samuel Armando Castro, and I live in the city of San Bernardino. I'm an active community member. I've been involved in various park cleanups, as well as the community garden that's popping up on 3rd Street. I really love San Bernardino, and I definitely work for it outside of, during my free time. And I'm taking action in regards to San Bernardino's amended 2021 annual action plan and the allocation of federal COVID-19 funding our city has received to address the pandemic in our city. The 2021 annual action plan has allocations for various services and descriptions of what they are to be spent on. However, the lack of detail in regards to specific structure, framework, and measurable timelines does not speak to the level of accountability we expect of our city and its leaders. In addition, the Judicial Council's delay on processing eviction cases will cease September 1st, meaning that our community members who are waiting for critical eviction prevention funds to be approved will likely be displaced before their application could be processed. So I ask that you modify the language in our eviction moratorium to protect our families from being homeless while our eviction prevention programs are funded and put in place. We ask that you ensure the process for rent relief and eviction prevention is fair, equitable, and efficient for immigrant families in our community who have been excluded from prior relief funding when in desperate need of support. I also ask that you work with our community to implement a working oversight committee to maintain that the budget proposed in the annual action plan is managed accordingly and reported to public, to ensure that our community's needs are being properly aided and give our city the statistical data to effectively adapt to our recovery moving forward. We ask that the funding for the eviction prevention program be administered through our direct service providers who are already doing the work as opposed to San Bernardino County's Housing Authority. This pandemic has hit our communities hard, and the proposed eviction prevention program is a step in the right direction. It is my hope that you will go further to protect our families in need, as well as learn to navigate this pandemic in an effective and equitable manner. I'm a voter, and along with my friends and family, we are paying close attention to the way in which these funds will be allocated to help those in need. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our community. Once again, I'm Samuel Armando Castro. I'm on 5651 Louise Street, San Bernardino, California, 92407. And I guess you could call me back if you want at 909-997-3485. Thank you. You guys have a wonderful day and a decent meeting. Please listen. That's all.
This is for public comments for the open session. Good evening. My name is Jeanette McKeag, and I'm a resident of the 7th Ward. A few days ago, I had asked Councilman Mulvihill about the progress of the mayor's harassment investigation. He said it had been completed, but no other council person felt the urgency to release it to the public. $68,000 of taxpayers' money was spent on this investigation. It had been decided before the investigation started that the findings would be made public. What has changed? Is Councilman Mulvihill the only person that has a conscience to do what is right? What stops the other council people sitting at the dais from releasing this report? Is it that you're up for re-election in November and don't want to step on any toes that would cut off your campaign funding? Is it that the findings may shine a light on the neglect at City Hall to protect its employees from harassment? Instead of allowing people to speculate why you're not releasing the report, why not tell the residents of San Bernardino why you approved $68,000 to fund an investigation that was supposed to be made public, and now you're choosing not to release the findings? Thank you.
Yes, my name is Renee Johnson, and I am calling in wondering why is there partiality when shutting down these pop-up taco stands? You have one that's right up the street from the DMV that is, they're not wearing masks, they're not wearing gloves. She went to fix my food with her bare hands after being on her cell phone. There's no running water, and we have COVID going on. If the restaurants have to do it, why are not these people out here illegally making money and selling food to people, touching food, the meat with your bare hands? When asked to replace the tortilla because she touched it with her hands, she told me I had the choice to eat there or not. Hello, we're in a pandemic, and you don't get to be out here serving food without a license or no running water, no mask, and no gloves. That is nasty. It's sickening. All it takes is one time for you to get food poisoning and have to go to the hospital. It's not a pretty sight. So I think everyone should be shut down with no preferential treatment. You need to have those masks. If we have a mandated mask, mandated gloves, you cannot be serving food without those on. We're trying to protect and where is this crazy mayor that is supposed to be engaged in the community? He ain't engaged. He's engaged in getting money in his pocket. We need to get him out there. How do we do the recall?
Hello, this is Robert Porter, born and raised in San Bernardino, for an item on the agenda. I'm here to talk about the cannabis licensing. Basically, you're talking about increasing it to 11 licenses, and that's absolutely unacceptable to me. I think we need at least 17, the amount of licenses you allow right now, or maybe go up to 600. There's cannabis being bought all over our city in the shadow market, and we need to do something about it to get those tax dollars into the real. These people want licenses. They want to come out of the shadows. So it's imperative that we check this out. I believe this monopoly is being maintained by some of the council members who are receiving funds from these cannabis licensees that already have it. For some, their only intention is to flip their license and make money. We don't need this anymore. We need to get these pay-for-play schemes out of San Bernardino and start focusing on helping our people.
Hello, my name is Shirley Harlan. I'm a resident of the city, and thank you quickly first on the animal shelter for the repairs. Yes, on that. However, I want to talk about transparency and the report on the mayor's behavior needs to be transparent. Jim Mulvihill is correct. You know, when you're in elected office, we are your employer, and this is public information at this point to us as to what the mayor has done either criminally or civilly. And that report that costs over $60,000 is our money. So we should see that report. We are voters, and in order to be good voters, we need to know the facts. And the facts that we need to know are in that report that we paid for. So I urge you to make that transparent and make it available to us so that we can know what the investigator found out and what they suggest is the remedy. And if you do not do that, then all of the other council members are also complicit in it. If you do not want your private life and what you do, I would suggest not running for office in the future. But once you run for office and you work on for us, even though we don't follow you every day, and maybe we should in the future, it's important that there's transparency and we know what you're doing. So very important that you make that report available to the public as soon as you can. That is because we will be voting. We are your employers, and we need to know what you're doing, how you're doing it, and hopefully you know what ethics are, but maybe some of you have a little difficulty with it. So please make that transparent. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Zafiro Peyes, and this is for open session. My question is, what are the plans that are being set forth to implement how we are going to be using the $6.5 million that were given to us for the COVID relief? And where can we find that? How is this going to be how are you guys going to be transparent on the way that you guys are going to allocate those funds for our community? And specifically for me, how are the children of this community going to be benefited by these type of funds? Thank you and have a great day.
My name is Merv Simkowitz from the Sunset Group. This is to the City of San Bernardino Mayor and City Council members. This is an open meeting, the final reading of Ordinance MC 1541 regarding the number of cannabis business permits. It is item 15 on the consent calendar tonight. I have heard from reliable sources that the Council intends to pull this item off the consent calendar and bend to the pressure of political contributors and the unsuccessful disgruntled applicants that are currently suing the city. The city licensing process has been a 2-year grueling and expensive roller coaster ride, and now the council intends to change the rules midstream and penalize the legally approved licenses by reneging on its original legal ordinance and meticulous procedure, rules and regulations created by its own Community Economic Development Cannabis Department, together with outside third-party adjudicators, HDL. The city is now opening itself up to huge legal action from legitimate approved applicants that have invested large amounts of funds, entered into expensive binding contracts and financing obligations that will now be affected. These legitimately approved license holders have real quantitative, expensive damage claims, not like the existing frivolous lawsuits from disgruntled license losers. The city is also now dealing with numerous other lawsuits that have recently surfaced, and it becomes clear that the city of San Bernardino has created an environment that explains its tenuous fiscal situation and confirms that it is anti-business development because it cannot be relied on or trusted by the business community. If the council enlarges the number of retail dispensaries from 11 to 17, plus refuses to close the existing 2 illegal operators and about 90 current black market operators in this city, all of who do not pay any taxes to the city, then no one will be making a living. There will be bankruptcies and the anticipated taxes to the city will be minimum. This will devastate the city, just like Marina Valley and Santa Ana. Over the past 40 years, I've successfully developed at least over 1 million square feet of buildings and energized the south part of this city by bringing reputable national and international tenants here who contribute hugely to the tax base. I respectfully request that the Council approve the final reading of the ordinance as accepted and voted on in the first reading. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Maribel Nunez with Inland Equity Partnership. This is for the open or the general meeting agenda item number 4, and this is regards to the detailed plan for CARES funding and ESG funds. And so we support efforts of rental assistance relief, no less than $1,295 3 months. And then there's also ESG funds. So let's continue helping the families, because I know that the current CARES funding might just be for 3 months, but the ESG funds, I think there's several $1 million more that can go with rental assistance or economic assistance. So we need to help more families. And I think this is also going to help the landlord. So this is a good program that helps all our communities, and then it helps keep the tax dollars here locally. So let's invest in helping families in regards to rental assistance, and if there's ESG funds, can we help more families? Would be really important. And then economic assistance, right? I think we prefer the money that relates to COVID and help the families in need. I think that there's other plans or other projects that are listed in your plan that I think could go better on other city budget funds, maybe a budget reallocation from the police department or what have you. But I think that right now, like, the need is so great, we need an economic recovery budget that is inclusive and includes CARES funding that will help our economic recovery in the city of San Bernardino. So thank you so much, Maribel Nunez, Inland Equity Partnership. Please make sure that's an inclusive application so that people that no requirement of a home inspection, and that it includes all our communities, immigrants, people that are undocumented. I know for a fact that if someone's undocumented, that doesn't disqualify them. So we will monitor that all communities are included, and people that are undocumented do not disqualify for them to qualify for this program. Maribel Nunez, Inland Equity Partnership, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Hi, my name is Christopher Gonzalez. I'm a resident of San Bernardino, California. I'm here to ask and talk about agenda number 4, the San Bernardino City CARES funding and ESG funds. I'm asking you guys to consider the funds for simple and inclusive preventive/homeless rental assistance program for $1,295 for the next 3 months each month. That'd be all. Thank you.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Mireya González, residente de San Bernardino por los últimos 17 años. Estoy llamando hoy para el número de agenda 4, San Bernardino City CARES Funding and ESG Fund. Y quiero pedirles que estos fondos sean usados de una manera simple e inclusiva para prevención de desalojo y asistencia de renta, otorgando $1,295 por mes por 3 meses consecutivos a las familias. Y también pedirles que la mayor parte de los fondos sean asignados para prevención de desalojo y asistencia de renta para nuestras familias en San Bernardino. Gracias por escuchar a la comunidad.
Ms. Gonzalez spoke on agenda item number 4, and she was requesting that the funds be allocated to prevent evictions and provide rent relief.
This is a public comment for Treasurer Ortiz for open session. Council, as we move forward in this meeting and looking over the closed session open session agenda, I look at the litany of litigation that we are facing with workman's comp, with Pepe's towing. You guys lost your request for a summary judgment. All the trials have been set in the claims against the mayor for sexual harassment. New claims have come forward, and yet there's still no plan to hold anybody accountable, especially the mayor, for all of his misconduct. In a time when we can't continue to afford case after case after case, we only have $20 million left in our reserves, and we owe the first $5 million of every single lawsuit that comes our way, and the evidence is mounting.
You guys need to step up and do something and ask for the resignation of the mayor. You said on February 19th through the assistant city attorney that the final report would be made public. Well, the final report, as far as the public has been notified, is complete. The city manager has seen it. You guys have all read it, and now it's time to let the people know what did or did not happen in the conduct of the mayor with his employees. It is up to us to decide whether or not we will hold him accountable in election or recall. But this cannot continue. Additionally, you guys are looking at reassessing the contract of the state advocate between $50,000 and $150,000. We don't have the money, and we all know, based on the reports of the Mount Vernon project of the bridge, that the majority of the funding was already there prior to you guys ever assigning this contract. You gave no number of the amount of funds that they brought into the city, so it makes absolutely no sense why you would guarantee almost $150,000 possibly for something you don't even know we can afford. We're kicking the can down the road as far as the budget's concerned, with the continued loss of revenue and no bailout in sight for anything that we've lost tax-wise in the last 4 months due to COVID. Our city is completely unstable. We have no plan in place to move forward. Measure Z is more than likely going to fail. I'm asking you guys to step up and do something. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Leticia Garcia. I'm calling regarding tonight's meeting. Specifically, there are a couple things that I want to address. And one is that this council had voted to provide the community with the findings of the investigation around the misdeeds of our mayor, John Valdivia. And as such, the report has not yet been made public, and we would like to see that that report is made public as soon as possible. I think we already know what's in the report. It's damning towards the mayor, and that's what he's trying to hide from the public. But the council must do the right thing and provide what they said they would provide to us, which was the information that became of the investigation. So we have the right to see it. It's paid for with tax dollars. And so I insist that this council release the findings of that report tonight, immediately. The other thing is, due to several claims that have been made against the city attorney, Sonia Carvalho, I'm asking again that she resign her position, as I really believe that it is a conflict that she privately counsels John Valdivia and still stays on as city attorney. She's also been named in the lawsuit as participant in some of the things that were happening at City Hall, and I think she really is just too close to John and to what's happening with him, and she just needs to resign, or the council needs to let her go. So I hope that you guys will finally start doing the right thing. Look, the community is sick and tired of all your bullshit. You guys need to get it together, stop kissing John's ass, and fire Sonia, and get it together for the city. You guys are elected to represent the city of San Bernardino and the residents in it, not John Valdivia. Get your shit together and get on with it.
I'm calling for public comment in open session for 2 reasons. My name is Jocelyn Doherty. I live in 7th Ward, and I just got notice about Measure S. I will be voting no for the following reasons. You're taxing citizens for poor decisions made by the council. And there's no specifics about what the funds will be used for. And there is no expiration date. I recommend that everyone vote no on this for fiscal responsibility for our city. Also, my second reason is that I want the investigation report on the sexual harassment by the mayor to be made public. My councilman Jim Mulvihill said he wants it, and I want it to be made public because we paid for it and it is supposed to be public. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, and staff. My name is Ryan Oganesian. I'm the president of RD San Bernardino LLC, commercial cannabis applicant CCB 18-0025. I'm reaching out this evening to encourage you to support the original proposal that was before you in July to increase the number of retail cannabis permits to 17. I believe this is a sound proposal and will benefit the city and the community as a whole. Cannabis has proven to be a reliable source of tax revenue for cities throughout California. As more retail cannabis dispensaries come online in San Bernardino, this effort will help diversify the city's economy and tax base. The city needs active retail cannabis dispensaries to benefit its tax base and to provide medicine to those in need. Since the permits were awarded in February 2019, only one retail business has opened its doors. Limiting the number of retail to the current 11 retail sites will only exacerbate the problem. The operators have proven that they are not prepared to begin operations, and it remains unclear when the city will even see a second retail dispensary open its doors if licenses are limited to the current operators. Our company, RD San Bernardino, applied for a retail license in 2019. We were ranked 6th in the application process, but the city only permitted 5 licenses for retail. We have been patient because we want to be good partners, and we have not filed any litigation because we're excited to be a partner and work with the city. We've been vetted out and we stand ready to open. We have a building located in Ward 3 and greatly appreciate the opportunity to obtain a commercial cannabis retail license from the city. I strongly encourage you to reconsider and support the original ordinance to increase the retail permits to 17, which is still beneath the state of California's recommended 1 per 10,000 residents. We look forward to working with you, and again, thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, and for the record, I would like to read the names of those that submitted written public comments for item number 4. And that was Aaron Albrecht, Andrea Garcia, Ariel Dolan, Beatriz Esparza, Deja Holland, Vanelli Milan, Faraz Rizvi, Felicia Jones, Jeremiah Flores, Jewel Patterson, Mary Angeles Guerrero, Maria Mata, Mia Cooper, Paul Quick, Ramy Goodman, Ramona Johnson, Sonia Gray-Hun, Victor Ponce de Leon, and Mr. Merv Simkowicz submitted a public comment for item number 15 regarding the final reading of ordinance MC 1541, and Mr. Tim Durham submitted a public comment regarding a sunshine ordinance. And that is the conclusion of public record.
Okay, thank you, Ms. City Clerk. Thank you, City Clerk. We appreciate it. And then,
Order.
Yes, Councilmember Richard.
I'd just like to make an announcement, if that's okay.
Please proceed. Yeah.
Yes, okay, so I just want to just make this announcement that San Bernardino has lost one of their own, and the mayor has lost one of his own. The mayor has lost his father. His father passed away. Gilbert Valdivia passed away peacefully on August the 10th at the age of 81. He was born right here in the city of San Bernardino. Gilbert leaves behind, he has 4 children. He has 4 Valdivia children. He is survived by several family members. He has 9 grandchildren. He loved the outdoors, gardening, fruit trees, and he will be missed by all. Private ceremonies were held this past weekend for Mr. Valdivia, and I would like to close this meeting in Mr. Valdivia's honor. I know that I met Mr. Valdivia. One of the things that he loved to do was talk about the past, everything that happened in San Bernardino because he was born and raised here. We had several conversations, and I learned to appreciate all of his knowledge. But also, I just like to say that, Mr. Valdivia, we send our heartfelt prayers to you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm just asking that we end this meeting in your dad's honor.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Richard. I appreciate the condolences from the city team, and I appreciate that gesture and your expression here tonight. Thank you, Councilmember Richard. Miss City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could just take a moment before we get started, I wanted to introduce our new Animal Services Director, Chris Watson. She's on my screen up there on the right. I hope you'll join me in welcoming her. Chris started work this past Monday, and she comes to us with over 20 years of management experience in animal services. She has a bachelor's degree in anthropology and a master's degree in public administration with a concentration on urban management and affairs. Prior to joining us here in San Bernardino, Christine was with the County of Orange for 13 years. Of those, she spent 11 years as manager of customer services and assistant director for the past 2 years, where she led a staff of 130 and managed a $23 million budget. Christine's wealth of experience will be very valuable to San Bernardino, especially as it relates to working with and coordinating nonprofits and volunteers and advising on solutions for our aging shelter. Please join me in welcoming Christine to our city team.
Very good. Thank you. And we welcome you to our team. We're so excited and elated to have you here in the city family and leading our animal services division. We appreciate your hard and dedicated efforts and welcome aboard. At this time, do you have any, I don't see her on our screen, so I can't.
She's up top to the right, all the way to the right corner.
Okay, would you like to address the city on?
I just want to say I'm excited to be here and looking forward to working with the team and serving the residents of San Bernardino and their animals.
Very, very good. Thank you, Ms. Watson, and welcome again.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we'll move on to tonight's staff reports. The first item is a report on Measure Z and the use of Measure Z funds for fiscal years 26 and 17 through 2018 and 19. There is a recommendation on the floor, and I'll turn it over at this time to our city manager, Ms. Ledoux.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm going to turn it over to Sam Singery, our accounting manager, who's going to go over the report that was given to the Measure Z Advisory Committee. And then when Sam's done, we've got our actual chairperson here, Veronica Martindale Taylor, and she's going to give her recommendation to you herself. So we're going to turn it over to Sam and get his PowerPoint going here.
All right, thank you. If you have Mitch, if you could fire up the PowerPoint there. All right, great. Well, good evening, Mayor and City Council. As the City Manager mentioned, joining me this evening is Reverend Veronica Martindale Taylor, who's the chair of the Measure Z Citizens Oversight Committee. The committee and city staff has met several times throughout the past few months to go over the revenues and expenditures and accompanying independent auditor reviews for the last 3 fiscal years. And so what we have for you this evening is just a brief report to receive and file on those last 3 years. And then at the end of the presentation, I'll turn it over to Ms. Martindale Taylor to go over some recommendations that she has, or that the committee had, for council to consider this evening. So next slide. The Citizens Oversight Committee for Measure Z was established as part of the ballot measure that was passed by voters in November of 2006. It stipulated within the ballot measure that the Citizens Oversight Committee would review the revenues and expenditures to make sure that all the funds were spent in accordance with the ballot measure, and that the committee would then report back to council and to the public. Accompanying Measure Z, as you all know, is the advisory measure YY, which directed that Measure Z proceeds be used to fund more police officers, support personnel, as well as anti-gang and anti-crime operations. Next slide, Mitch. The Measure Z expenditure policy that was adopted by council just prior to Measure Z going into effect stipulated that the funds be used in accordance with the advisory measure that we just saw, as well as the intent of Measure Z funds to be used to enhance or to supplement but not supplant general fund spending on law enforcement and crime prevention programs, as well as to the extent possible for Measure Z funds to be used for items that would not be programs or items that wouldn't be funded apart from Measure Z funding, things like overtime for crime impact teams, crime suppression supplies, some additional recruitment costs, as well as incremental costs for some sworn and non-sworn positions. Next slide. And so as mentioned before, the Oversight Committee met with city staff on July 20th and then again on August 10th We reviewed the Measure Z revenues and expenditures for the past 3 fiscal years, so fiscal years 2017 through 2019. All the previous years had already been reviewed by the committee and presented to council in previous years. Some of the items that the committee and staff went over was an in-depth financial analysis of Measure Z revenues and expenditures, so looking at changes year over year, looking at the details of expenditures and what were included in those each year, doing the supplement versus supplant analysis as stipulated in the Measure Z expenditure policy, as well as looking an overview of the procedures that the independent accounting firm performed and the accompanying results of those procedures. So each of those items is discussed in more detail in the staff report in your packet. We'd be happy to discuss those at the end of the presentation if you have any questions. But just to summarize the independent auditor's review, they did not identify any exceptions for all 3 years under review, and were able to conclude that the funds were expended as required by Measure Z and Advisory Measure YY for each of those 3 years. So now I will turn it over to Ms. Martindale-Taylor to go over some of the recommendations that the committee had for you all tonight to consider.
Thank you. Can everyone be heard?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. Welcome.
Excellent, thank you. First, giving honor to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, to Mayor Valdivia, council members, and all viewing attendees. It is my responsibility and pleasure to share with council the recommendation of Measure Z Committee. Please consider the recommendations provided by the Measure Z Citizens Oversight Committee to adopt clear fiscal policies and procedures for the use of the city's revenue. The city's fiscal policies should be established to ensure the city's long-term fiscal stability, providing clear direction so that the city's finances are managed in a manner that will provide for the delivery of quality services, ensure a balanced budget, and establish reserves necessary to meet known and unknown future obligations. The committee further recommends that the City Council direct staff to prepare these fiscal policies to be reviewed by the Oversight Committee for input prior to being presented to the City Council for adoption. Should voters approve a 1% general district sales tax in November 2020, renewing and increasing the Measure Z district sales tax scheduled to sunset on March 31st, 2022, the committee recommends the City Council provide clear direction as to how this revenue will be allocated, including measurable goals prior to the November 2020 general election. The mayor and city council will need to establish clear guidelines along with an expenditure plan that will enable the committee to participate in the review and oversight of the use of these revenue in keeping with the city's priorities, including a balanced distribution of resources to support public safety, emergency response, and violence intervention services, cleaner and safer neighborhoods, retaining and attracting new businesses, street, park, and library maintenance improvements, youth, senior, and homeless service programs. And additionally, the committee recommends that the city complete an annual audit report with the Oversight Committee assigned responsibility for reviewing the city's compliance with the expenditure plan established for the use of the general district sales tax revenue. Thank you, Council. Our Measure Z committee looks forward to receiving the Council and the Mayor's direction.
Okay, thank you very much, Reverend Veronica Martindale. We appreciate your leadership, and we appreciate all the members of the Measure Z Audit Committee. It's a very important role and oversight. We'll open it up for council members' discussion and questions or discussion. Councilmember Nickel, go ahead, sir. You're muted.
Well, first off, I think that was one of the most well put policy recommendations I've heard come forward to our council since I've been here. And thank you for that. I think this is what we need. I think this is exactly what the voters expected when Measure Z was passed, and my hat is off to you and your fellow members of the Measure Z committee. This is what it means to be responsible to our residents and to task them with ensuring we do our job. Miss City Manager and Miss City Attorney, what, if any, potential issues might we have in adopting this? I know that it is a general tax, but I think we can adopt guidelines in terms of the expenditure. Is that correct?
Certainly, many cities do have policies.
I would like to bring back these guidelines, this policy recommendation, as a formal item for potential council adoption. I think this is what we need. I think this is what the voters expect. And certainly, should the voters decide to impose a 1% tax on themselves to further the quality of life and the needs of the city, we need to have some clear guidelines as the council, as the policymakers, to ensure those funds are used appropriately. So if we could get those guidelines back to us, or this policy recommendation, as either a resolution or some other manner in which we can formally adopt this as a council, I would move to do that now.
Okay, very good.
Second.
So, council member, why don't we take this incremental? Are you suggesting that the staff recommendation 1 and 2 move for approval? Is that your?
Yes, I will move for the staff recommendation, but I would also move that we bring back the recommendations brought forward by the Measure Z committee for formal adoption.
I think that's covered in too, Councilman.
All right.
Okay, great. We got a second by Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez. Thank you, sir. Councilmember Ibarra, you had some comments or questions? Go ahead, ma'am.
I actually was seconding it, but that's okay. I do applaud the report and the recommendations brought forward by Reverend Veronica. She's heavily involved in the city, and that's what we want. We want our community to be engaged with our decision making here. I applaud the work, and I would totally try to push this even faster, not wait until the election day, because we want to show the taxpayers that we want to do good for them with their sales tax money. So if we can move this fast, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Ibarra. Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes, again, I think I really appreciate the recommendations of the distribution of the resources. I want to ask Reverend Veronica, the order of the policy recommendations you have, is that the magnitudes? I mean, for example, do you want most of want public safety being the top, cleaner, safer neighborhoods second, or was this just a list? In other words, if I were to looking at this, I would think that retaining and attracting new businesses, because we are looking at generating sales taxes, that retaining and attracting new businesses would probably be of greater importance, because that's really what this is all about. Reverend Veronica?
Well, definitely, we just have those as our top 5, and so we just allowed you as the council to be able to distribute, but we wanted to make sure that these are the most important that your residents and your constituents are looking at.
So not necessarily any more order of magnitude. It's just that the listing here does not indicate any order of importance.
This is what's important, but like I said, with council, we pass it to you as far as your goal, because I think that you've adopted a goal too as council to maybe match that out as a city goal that you that council has.
For example, I guess the point is that the police get really a lion's share of the budget already,
Right.
but we don't have anybody, a real professional in terms of economic development for retaining and attracting new businesses. And so I would be interested in actually hiring a professional to economic development person with this funds. But anyway, I understand what you're saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Mulvihill. Final questions or comments? Yes, Councilman Charette, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Along those lines, I'd be a little careful, Jim. I think we've got a real professional in Mike Huntley in economic development, and I think that I don't think you meant exactly what you said.
And housing and planning.
You're saying somebody maybe specifically
Exactly. Exactly.
hired to do that, because Mike has a full plate without a doubt.
No.
And I agree with you that the Measure Z money and the lion's share of our budget goes to basically to CalPERS and to the police department. And I would want to have some conversation about how we allocate any potential funds. In other words, does it call for another workshop to discuss the 2 or 3 or top 5 items that we want to really direct this money to? If it were me at this point in time, I would be leaving the police department with what they currently have, including the current $9 million that they receive from the Measure Z money, approximately $9 million, and that anything over and above that be going into quality of life, economic development, other areas that are going to attract business and change our quality of life in this city. I'm a big supporter of PD and public safety, and that's our #1 goal as politicians, as policy setters, is to provide our city with public safety, both fire and police. But beyond that, it can't all be about that. It's got to be about economic development, because I'm a firm believer, I think it's kind of the broken windows theory, that if we fix up some of the problems, some of the quality of life issues and the economic development, and promote real economic development in this community and get businesses going and thriving and working well and hiring people, that's really where we'll see a reduction in crime, basically the broken window theory. So I don't disagree with anything that's been said up to this point. I do appreciate the committee's comments and recommendations, but I would think that as policy setters, we would want to have some sort of a special meeting, workshop, conversation about how we actually allocate the funds if and when we get them.
Thank you, Fred. Appreciate it. Ms. Ledoux,
Yeah, that's exactly what I would recommend, is that we have a workshop or a study session so you can discuss it, and then we bring something back for you to adopt.
All right, very good. There's a motion on the table. There's a second. And Ms. City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Sanchez?
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra?
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa?
Oops.
Councilmember Figueroa?
He's not here. He didn't join the meeting. He left.
Okay.
Mad because we didn't let him talk before.
The City Clerk, please proceed with the roll call. Thank you.
Councilmember Charette?
Well, I'm sorry, but I need a little clarification on exactly what the motion is. I mean, is this including setting up a workshop and what have you, or are we just is this an?
I think there's no objections, Fred, on the workshop, and we have the
What is the motion?
consensus. So the motion is the floor motion. It's on your staff report. It's items 1 and 2. That's the recommended motion. and there's been a second and a motion. Your vote, sir?
I'll abstain.
Okay. Councilmember Nichol.
Yeah, and just to be clear, my motion anticipates that we will have, after that workshop, an item that will come back to us so we can formally adopt that policy. And I would recommend we do this sooner rather than later because the voters are looking to us to establish a policy before they vote in November.
So that's your part of your proposal,
Yes.
part of your recommendation.
Councilman Nichol, what's your vote, sir?
Yes.
All right.
And I'll change my
Councilmember
vote
Richard,
to yes, based
I'm
on
sorry,
that.
you're out of order, Fred. Just a moment, sir. We're doing the roll call, please. Please respect the protocol. Councilmember Richard.
Yeah, I wanted to second it, but I'll say yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Mulvihill?
Yes.
And through the
Motion.
chair.
Yes, sir. Mr.
through the
Charette.
chair, I would change to an affirmative as long as it includes that workshop.
Very good, sir.
For us.
So noted. And Ms. City Clerk, if you'd announce the results.
Okay, the motion passes by 6 votes and showing Councilmember Figueroa absent from the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Item number 2 is moving on to approve the changes in the long-range property management plan disposition designations for the real property located at 562 West 4th Street and 780 North E Street with the successor action. So the recommendation is before you, Council, and we'll turn it over to Ms. Ledoux.
And I will turn it over to our Community and Economic Development Director, Mike Huntley.
Thank you, Terry. Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. As the City Council is aware, the City Council serves as the capacity of the successor agency for the former redevelopment agency in the City of San Bernardino. As part of the dissolution that occurred in 2012, cities or former redevelopment agencies were created the successor agency, and they were required to adopt what's called the long-range property management plan. This long-range property management plan was to address the disposition and use of real property assets that were held by the successor agency or former redevelopment agency properties. In 2015, the successor agency approved the long-range property management plan. Shortly thereafter, the County Oversight Board did, and then after that, the State Department of Finance also gavelled down and approved that also. Subsequent to that, there were 21 properties that the successor agency staff moved forward in liquidation. We're winding that down at this point, but in early 2019, the city had realized that a portion of what's called Site 21 of the long-range property management plan, and for the benefit of the council, I'll call Theater Square, which includes the Regal Theater, California Theater, and the Sturgis Center of Fine Arts. All those were included within Site 21. As we looked at the long-range property management plan, it appeared that it was incorrect, or it incorrectly designated all of those sites for future development. And need I say, we don't want to tear down the California Theater or the Sturgis Center either. So as such, we are moving forward with trying to address that issue. If council remembers, in May of last year, we brought an item before the city council, I should say successor agency, to consider a compensation agreement for those 2 theater assets. The successor agency had approved those, and what the intent was to transfer the Sturgis Theater over to San Bernardino Unified School District, and then the city would retain the California Theater. We then moved the compensation agreement onto the County Oversight Board, at which point the County Oversight Board wanted us to change our compensation agreement, and they wanted us to adopt theirs with some understanding that if we ever were to demolish either of those 2 theaters, that we would compensate the county for those, meaning that if we ever were to sell them and someone was to tear them down, that the county would get their fair share of the sales revenue. But clearly, that was not the city's intent. As such, staff reached out to the State Department of Finance, and their discussion with us and their recommendation would just be to change the designation in the long-range property management plan. That would be to change it from future development to really just changing it to governmental use, and that's what the recommendation is in front of the council tonight. It's just kind of our ability, since this was a plan, plans can be changed or amended. Our recommendation is just to change the designation from future development to governmental use. Once council approves the resolution tonight, would take that back to the county oversight board, and then it would go up to the State Department of Finance. What somewhat of the urgency is that we have been in discussions for over a year with the school district regarding that property. They would like to take ownership and utilize that asset, but they can't until we get this through the process. So that's really what our intent is just to clarify the long-range property management plan and move forward with the direction actually council gave us back in May of 2019. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Mr. Huntley, the 562 West 4th Street, that is, what is that? No, is that the California Theater then?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
And 780 North East Street is Sturgis Center?
You are correct.
What is the, I mean, this is property that the city owns. We've never really entertained deep discussions about it, but what is the consensus and really rationale from the recipient? So city schools on Sturgis, why do they want our property? I mean, this is a big vote for us. What's a collaboration and partnership? Do we have any agreements on their part so that we can have shared uses of it? I mean, this is a big asset for our community.
City manager was going to make a comment.
Yeah, Mayor, as you recall, you approved this last year. It's been about a year now, as Mike said, and we've been working with the county on this. So what happened is there was a standstill because of the paperwork and the way that we did it. So we're just coming back to you tonight to ask you to approve it in a different manner so we can make that transfer. As you know, the Sturgis Theater is on the campus of the school district, and they want to make it part of their larger campus as they redo that. I do believe...
And there would be some benefit for joint use between both the city and the school district.
I would almost insist on it that we need to also utilize that when we have municipal functions, almost serving as our municipal auditorium, because that's a key asset. So I would hope that there's a sense of a spirit of cooperation, collaboration, so that we can ensure that our community events and municipal events are also held in conjunction at any one of these California theaters or Sturgis Theater. So that'd be my comment on that.
We agree.
Councilman Nickel, sir, did you have a comment? Oh, okay. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the staff recommendation.
The second by anybody?
I've got a question. I have a question.
Councilmember, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilman Nickel. Councilman Mulvihill, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, it's 3 parcels. I see the California Theater and I see the Sturgis. Is one of those has 2 parcels associated with it?
The third one's going to be Regal.
Oh, okay. Now, what's the goal of the Regal? Now, these 2, the California and the Sturgis, are going to be listed as governmental uses?
Correct. They will be changed from future development to governmental use.
Okay. And the third one is the Regal Theater.
For disposition, that was transferred to the city. So we're currently working on the disposition. We'll be bringing that back to council.
Okay. I don't see the Regal listed on here anywhere. Is it?
Well, we just wanted to focus on the 2 components of it.
Okay.
And the 2 components, we want to ensure that our governmental use are the Sturgis and California.
Sure.
Theater.
Understood. But it says 3 parcels and it mentions 3 parcels, but it only describes 2. I'm looking for another one, but thank you. It's Regal.
Sure.
Okay, so thank you, council member. I think we have a motion and a second. Ms. City Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Councilmember Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Yes.
Councilmember Charette,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard,
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Item passes 6 votes.
Thank you very much, Ms. City Clerk. The third item on tonight's staff report is a City Clerk employment agreement. And there's a staff recommendation. Ms. City Manager. So noted by Councilman Charette and Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez on approval of the floor motion. Are there any discussion? Ms. City Manager?
Yes, if you could let Eddie speak to this, or Human Resources.
Sure. Go ahead.
Thank you, Terry. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I have to read a brief statement into the record before the vote is taken. So in accordance with Government Code Section 54953C3, the legislative body is required to orally report a summary of a recommendation for a final action on the salaries, salary schedules, and compensation paid in the form of fringe benefits of a local agency executive during the open meeting in which the final action is to be taken. Item number 3 is a contract for the office of the city clerk. The base salary of the city clerk is $123,336 per year and receives management confidential benefits. Additionally, the city clerk receives a vehicle allowance pursuant to resolution number 2018-171. This concludes the staff report.
Thank you very much. And there's a motion. There's a motion and a second. Thank you. And at this time, I will ask Eddie, can you please, or Ms. City Manager, would you call the roll on this, please?
Well, our city clerk can call the roll.
Well, it's her item, so I
I would be happy.
Ms. City
Sorry
Manager.
about that. Let me go through. Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez.
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa is absent. Councilmember Charette.
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel.
Yes.
Councilmember Richard.
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill.
Big yes.
And Mayor Valdivia.
Yes.
Unanimous 7-7 with Juan being absent.
All right. Welcome aboard, Ms. Rocha. We look forward to working with you, and we thank you and congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Very good. Moving on to item number 4, the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting. This is a substantial amendment action plan of Corona relief funds. We've heard several public comments. We will go ahead and do a staff report, and then I will recognize Ms. Rocha, as we do have one public speaker. But before we get there, we'll turn it over to staff for a staff presentation, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to turn it over to Gretel Noble, our housing manager.
Honorable Mayor and City Council members, good evening.
I'm sorry, Ms. Noble, just one moment, please. I opened the meeting at 8:30 p.m. And I just wanted for the record to reflect that. Please go ahead, Ms. Noble.
Okay. Before you tonight for your consideration and action is a substantial amendment to the city's 2021 action plan. The action plan is actually the city's annual application to the Department of Housing and Urban Development for the federal funds that the city is allocated annually. When a change in funding amounts or activities occurs, the city must amend the plan to include changes and also to receive public comment. The supplementary allocations that the city received under the CARES Act are the primary reason that a substantial amendment is required. If you would refer to attachment 1 for the specific recommendations for both CDBG CV and ESG CV 1 and 2, you'll see the amounts that were allocated to the city and also the activities that are being recommended for those funds. In addition to the CARES Act funding, it is also being recommended that funding for a motel conversion under the State CARES Act HomeKey program be approved. You can refer to Table 2 in the attachment. The County of San Bernardino has applied for a HomeKey grant for 2 locations in the city. If you approve the funding, the city's participation in the project would be $2 million. A change to the approved funding for a second park housing project is also proposed. Basically, funds from the low-income housing fund would replace home funds. Home funds have a limited time frame for use, and it does not appear that the project would be moving forward this fiscal year, but therefore it allows us to redeploy those funds, use them in a more timely fashion so we can meet our timeliness requirements with HUD. Lastly, ESG funds that could not be used by our subrecipients this year, those local providers that we fund, were returned to us, and we recommend, it is being recommended that they be reprogrammed in the amount of $72,000 and for the Salvation Army's Rapid Rehousing Program. That program helps families and households to rapidly move into a unit when they become homeless, helps them identify it and provide funding for their move-ins, their utility hookups, and it also case manages them. Those are basically the recommendations being made for the substantial amendment. Once you approve the amendment, then it is input into the information system at HUD, and then they can take up to 45 days to approve it. Once they approve it, only then can we enter into agreements and contracts for these dollars. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Noble. We appreciate, was that a motion for approval, Ms. Councilmember?
Yes.
No.
Motion for approval, but I do also have a comment.
Councilmember Richard with the motion for approval. Go ahead, Councilmember.
What I want to say is within the county of San Bernardino, there's a whole lot of COVID relief funding going around. But with the County of San Bernardino Workforce Development Department, I want people to understand, or the public to understand, that just because you qualify one place, that doesn't mean that you do not qualify in another place. You guys reach out to every organization that has received this funding to assist with housing, utility bills, transportation assistance. You reach out to every department. If you reach out to Workforce Development, just because you get these funding from the city of San Bernardino, that does not mean you do not qualify for other funding. So everybody continue to reach out wherever you can, because we want to make sure our citizens of San Bernardino, the city of San Bernardino, are able to survive through this.
Thank you, Councilmember. We appreciate your comments. Councilmember Mulvihill, sir, go ahead.
Yes, Gretel?
Yes.
Okay. Thought I just checking to make sure I'm not muted here. There was also a proposal here with regard to the expenditure for 25 mentally ill people in downtown area of San Bernardino.
Yes. So
can you explain that a little bit?
Yes, I can. So if you look at table number 5 in attachment 1, you will see that the bottom recommendation in that table is for Mental Health Systems. Mental Health Systems is an organization out of San Diego, and they have been working in the county of San Bernardino under the HEAP program, if you remember that, about a year and a half ago. They provide street outreach, direct outreach to acutely mentally ill homeless persons. So there is a psychiatrist. The team is comprised of psychiatrists, a nurse, a case manager, and a peer outreach person. And what they do is they go out on the street, they approach persons who are suffering from mental illness and are homeless, and they can offer them immediate housing. So part of the money that is in this proposal that's being recommended is for apartments or that the organization master leases throughout the city in order to be able to provide housing immediately to people who are interested. In addition, the team can provide medication management, they can provide referrals for mental health, and they also provide case management. So it's a well-rounded approach that has had success in other counties. And when we look at our outreach program for homeless persons, we find that we are least successful with persons who have mental illness. Our nonprofit organizations, our homeless providers are not trained psychiatrists or psychiatric nurses. So it is very difficult for them to be able to really make an impact in this subpopulation of the homeless in our city. And so the goal is to address those very acute and severe needs that this population has, and provide them with housing, provide them with medication, and alleviate their situation.
Thanks, Gretel. I really think it's a real positive program, but I guess my issue is I'd like to see more of it. 25 I'm looking at the last point in time count, and San Bernardino City has 1,050 homeless people in the point of town count, and of that, 823 are unsheltered. And there's estimates that mentally ill, there's probably 40% of that 800, or excuse me, 40% of that 1,000 is have mental health problems. And so, our issue is much larger than we're sort of budgeting for it. And I'm just wondering if could we expand the program? I mean, you've obviously made contacts for a couple of dozen people. I'm just wondering, could we expand it, triple it, quadruple it? Because there are that many people. I mean, and it's not just in the downtown area. It's all over San Bernardino. In our flood control areas, when I was canvassing my ward and over by the county flood control, I mean, you could watch the fence people going back and forth into the flood control area. And so I just know that this problem exists all over the city. Is it possible to start thinking about expanding it?
We are in a unique situation right now because we have received such a boon with the CARES Act money. We've received $4 million additional ESG dollars. Typically, we get $280,000 to $295,000 a year. As you can see, a program like this, where you have to master lease and you have to employ highly trained professionals, is an extremely expensive program. Where I would find the dollars to do that, that's what I think of as where the resources would come from. The only resource that I can think of that I would have into the near future would be the permanent local housing allocation dollars, for which we have applied for. We are applying for $2 million for homeless services, and I would really need to look and see, since this would be probably permanent housing, it may be a source. But again, to double or triple this program would be quite an undertaking. I have connected with my peers at the county and asked them to look at funding a program with this organization so that we could sort of marry our efforts. I just heard back from the county that they are considering a program with them. What I would prefer that the county do is that they fund in flood control, because the flood control comes through our city.
Yeah.
And that would really have an impact on us, as opposed to just funding it somewhere in the county, because the source of the dollars don't permit them to fund it in the city, but our city would benefit if they funded it in the flood control. So it's
That's
sort of
right.
a way to work through it.
And I guess you bring up another point that I'd like to make is that, no city, no jurisdictions has sufficient, even the county has sufficient amount of money to really eliminate homelessness. And what I would like to do is, could we establish closer ties with the county in a partnership? And I think that's what I'd like to propose, is that I think along with this, I would like to see staff bring back a resolution that to establish a more formal tie with the county, and hopefully with other jurisdictions as well, to pool our resources. Obviously, the county has got a lot more staff that can work on this, and more connections and outreach possibilities. So what I'd like to propose is that added to this is that we establish a formal program, a formal partnership with the county. Would you agree with that?
I think that's a good idea, because I think together we can probably work through some of the issues that create these sort of borders within the county, where certain activities can't be funded in a city that receives dollars. I think we can overcome that, or work with HUD to help us overcome it. So I think that would be very helpful to us.
Would the recommender of the proposal like to add that to it, that we establish a more formal partnership with the county?
That would be Councilmember Richard. Jim, my only thought is, I think we're already member agents of the ICH, and
But it's not really a formal close tie.
Well,
what I'm looking at.
If you allow me, please, to finish. My point is that we have a established relationship and a bridge via the ICH. We have membership on it. We have membership. We meet monthly. In fact, one of our members has been part of the executive TAC team. So I think we have that collaborative efforts. I'm not.
No, we don't. We don't.
Okay, I'm not saying that it's not a bad idea, Jim. I'm just saying that we already. I mean, I don't know if we're going to go through. You know, it's just a little bit more additional staff time, but it's the council's decision. I think we already have representation. Councilmember Richard.
What I was going to say, yes, we do. You know, what I can do is take it back to the committee. Everything is committee involved, and we can take it back to the committee. One thing that I did when I joined this committee is I wanted to make sure that San Bernardino was a part of what was happening. Before I joined that committee, we were not a part of this board. And so I will take it back. Let's talk about it. Let's make sure we get the proper funding for our city in the city of San Bernardino. And we will do that. But so Jim, we do have the representation. We do work. The board is always willing to listen to new ideas, but we cannot come to them and say, we just want funding. We have to come with an idea. So one of the things that I made sure is that me as a council member being on the board, made sure that my alternate was not another council member, but our alternate was another city employee, so that we could hear everything and we could bring everything back to the city. Gretel knows about it, and just let us work through it. We will bring something back. I will bring it to the board, like I said, and we'll see that we can make it happen.
I think the point is that I've been sitting in on those interagency council meetings as well, and it's very loosely organized, and there's competition between various jurisdictions and cities. You hear arguments back and forth about, again, whether information is being passed along and so forth. And what I'd like to do is be more direct and simply go ask the county to become partners with us become partners with the county directly, and to blend our resources with the counties. We are the county seat. We share the same space in San Bernardino City, and asking for that would not be, out of the question.
Okay, thank you, council member. We got several other council members. Let's now move to council member. We have several hands up. Let's start with council member Barr. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. I have met with Mr. Huntley last week, and I had several questions that have not been answered. I'm hoping, Gretel, you can help me answer them. First off, I'd like to know approximately how many beds do we have for the homeless citywide, or at least with the agencies that we're funding?
Youth and Social Services has 75 beds. You have to keep in mind that now with the social distancing, that may have been significantly reduced.
Right.
The Salvation Army has probably we fund the Hospitality House, which is a shelter for women and children. So those beds are a little more difficult to count because you're including families. So I would say they can probably accommodate 50 to 60 persons, that includes children and so forth. Those really are the only beds that we fund in the city. The Salvation Army does have a rehab program, but that's for, rehabilitation specific, and they do take homeless people there, but we don't fund that program. And so the only shelters that we fund are Lutheran Social Services and the Salvation Army.
Okay, so Step Up on Second doesn't have any beds available.
They don't run a shelter, no.
So for the emergency shelter money that we're giving them, what exactly are they doing with that money?
Emergency shelter is considered an activity. So outreach, street outreach is categorized under emergency shelter. And their specialty then is outreach.
Okay, because they had
a shelter under the ESG activity categories.
Okay, and so going on now on the street outreach amount that we're giving them, 300,000. Your email said 18% of that money goes towards their admin cost, correct?
18% goes towards personnel, Okay, 50% of their funds go to direct supportive services. Now, what you have to keep in mind too is that direct supportive services for outreach are the people who are on the street.
And is there any way for all of these agencies to work in collaboration with our quality of life team when they're going out to the homeless encampments and do their outreach there? My understanding is that every district commander, they go on different days to have the proper staffing to help them clear out the encampments. I think that would be something that we need to put into a contract with these agencies so that they're actually outreaching to the homeless instead of our police officers being out there.
The difficulty for someone who is doing outreach and to be an advocate for the homeless and on one side and on the other side to be an enforcer of local laws is contradictory to what they are trying to accomplish. So an advocate needs to be an advocate. They need to go out, they need to say, do you need food, do you need a house, do you need me to get to your social security, so on. They cannot be the same person who is saying, pick up your things and hit the road. So it's very important that we keep those two roles separate in order for the outreach program to be successful. A lot of the people that are outreach workers touch are people who are very afraid. They have been failed many times by our system. So they need to believe that they can trust this person just as they are, without any judgment, without any having to move on and so forth. So it would be difficult to ask our outreach providers to also be enforcers of.
I'm not asking them to be enforcers though. I'm asking that they be with the team, but talk to the homeless or the transients that we have instead of, PD will do their part, Public Works will do their part, but our outreachers will do their part as well. Keep them separate. That's what I'm looking for, because right now, how do we account for the work that they're doing? Everywhere you see the same homeless, not getting the services or the help that they need. And the numbers are increasing hugely, especially in the second ward.
I see what you're trying to get at. So we track the people who they contact with through the HMIS system. So because these dollars are federal dollars, we have to use what is called the coordinated entry system, 211, and each person is given a number and input into the system. And so they're in the homeless management information system. So when I get a report, there is a number that's given to me for each contact that the outreach worker has made, how they were entered into the system and what services were provided to them and how they were moved on or referred on to permanent housing or services. So we can account for it. Our outreach workers, especially Step Up, we're all working on the streets when everything else was shut down. They work nights, they work weekends, they work the flood control channels, they work the public parks, the bathrooms. So there is a system for tracking. And we get reports on, that's how we track how many people have been housed, how many people have been provided linkage services. So
for this past year, do we know how many Step Up on Second, for example, how many they housed?
28.
28? And how much money did we give them?
I'm sorry. This last year was 25. The year before it was 28. 25 chronically homeless people were housed through their outreach program. 79 persons were linked to services, and of the total number between the 79 and 25, 99 were unaccompanied females, which is really a very vulnerable group. And we reach out to that. The outreach team reaches out to that group. 37 female heads of household and 28 children for provided services.
Okay, and then
keep in mind that sometimes when people are approached, they don't want services right away, and it can take several encounters before someone is willing to accept.
Correct, services. And that's why I was hoping that these groups would join our quality of life team with them just doing their part of it, because that way at least they're making that contact as we're also doing our part of the city. Because right now we're just pushing the homeless out of the area temporarily, and they're back within 2 hours, 4 hours, and causing the nuisance in the neighborhood or all the unsightly, unhealthy safety hazards that they're causing. So that's on CDBG. I'm sorry, and now I want to go on the ESG. I wanted to go back on the CDBG. I know at the CDBG ad hoc meeting, we had several questions for our staff to follow up on, and want to see if there's an update on how the Housing Authority will be processing the rental assistance on their end, if what kind of requirements there are. I didn't see that on the report.
Okay, so I think the council had a question, the ad hoc committee, I'm sorry, had a question regarding undocumented households. Is that correct?
Correct.
So the CDBG regulations do not prohibit assistance to undocumented individuals. So for the eviction prevention program, we will require a valid state issued ID to verify identity and a lease. Both of those are requirements in order for us to be able to verify that the household is who they say they are, the person is who they say they are, and that they are residents of the city of San Bernardino. So that's why we would need a lease.
Okay, and then
targeted to residents.
Excellent. And then one last question. We are following the state mandates with the eviction moratoriums, correct? We're still doing that?
So the eviction moratorium is, you know, the Judicial Council voted to lift that September 1st. However, I think as of Wednesday, the California legislature today introduced a measure, I think it's AB 1436, for long-term eviction relief for renters in the state. So it looks like, although I know many of the callers were concerned that before the eviction program got off the ground, that people would be losing their homes. Correct. The proposed measure at the state level would give renters up to 15 months after the health emergency has been lifted to address concerns regarding eviction. So although that has not been passed, I think it's been through committee, and then we'll move on to a vote. So it would be something to keep, you know, keep abreast of.
Correct. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councilmember Barra. Ms. Noble, I just wanted to highlight some area of concern that I had. I want to, I think Councilmember Barra, you bring up a lot of good points. Is how do we interface? How do we make our policing and issues related to the homeless? How do we integrate and how do we coalesce efforts? This is a lot of money here, and I think the taxpayers in our community want more of a solution as to the public issues on street sidewalks and all of that that we get calls every day on. On packet page 110, Ms. Noble, your team highlights on table 2 the fiscal year of 2021 home program, the Home Key program motel conversion of $1.3 million. And then on packet page 122, you then allude to it on a project enumerated list. That's on packet page 122. And then further on packet page 132, you suggest that there is the project number 11, that there is a citywide target area and the goal is to preserve and rehabilitate housing. I do have some concerns with the location description. Can you please provide a report to the council on the 2 possible locations which have been identified as I'm reading your report here, and that you're currently negotiating with the owners? Where are those locations in our city? And do they meet the council's restrictive concerns regarding social programs, especially in motel, in this proposed conversion of motels?
Okay, so I heard 2 questions there. One was, how do we address the homeless concerns with regard to people on the sidewalks and policing and so forth? And the program that we are anticipating working with mental health services and with Step Up, we have a targeted area in downtown that will work with that policing group down there to help to coordinate with them the work that we're going to do there. And we're also reaching out to the business owners in that area to be able to meet with them and address their concerns. So that is one. The other project you're referring to, the Home Key program with the motel conversions, that is a, the application in that effort is being led by the county. And they had been in communications and negotiations apparently prior to the issuance of these Home Key dollars with the owners of the property located at 450 North G Street, which is, I understand, the All-Star Lodge. And then also with the property owned by the Salvation Army at 2626 Pacific. So the conversion of these units would not be for social service type use. They would be for permanent housing, where someone would have a lease and they would have tenant rights within that unit that they would occupy at the property on 450 North G Street.
Thank you, Ms. Noble. The operative word, council, is that if we partner, as was described here by the report, that we have county overseeing the home key program and the motel conversion. That's a little bit troubling to me because it's funneled through our dollar stream here in the city, and yet we're almost relinquishing, in a spirit of collaboration, but nonetheless, we're funneling our money and it's coming through our dollars, and yet we're relinquishing the reins as to where we want these conversions. So that is a concern. I'll just highlight it to the council. We need to be very keenly aware of how this continues on this motel conversion. I think Councilman Nickel, you had some concerns expressed via email earlier, and I'll hand it over to you, sir.
Yeah, and I agree with the mayor's concerns. I also agree with the concerns expressed by fellow council members, which is the need for collaboration, and it goes both directions. I'm very concerned about the county more or less unilaterally making a decision on a location for a homeless housing facility that just happens to be immediately between the 5th Street redevelopment corridor and our Carousel Mall redevelopment area. This is not only not an appropriate location, it is very much counter to the city's long-term needs to redevelop our downtown and attract the type of retail establishments and sales tax generating establishments, as well as urban living, higher quality residential type of facilities that are required to really restart and kickstart our downtown. I have very serious concerns. I simply cannot approve the allocation of $1.3 million for a facility that we have not been engaged in any discussions in regard to its location or its potential impact on our downtown redevelopment. I simply cannot support the allocation of that $1.3 million if it will be used for the 450 G Street location as currently proposed. I would request that the county and whatever partners are engaged in that project come forward before the council and engage with us. I think we can certainly have some conversations about what can be done. I do assume that there will be wraparound services provided at this facility, Ms. Noble.
So it's housing, not a facility. We need to get our terminology.
Well, whatever it is, will there be wraparound services?
It's housing that will have supportive services available.
Okay,
yes.
and are those services considered social services?
I'm sorry?
Are those services considered social services in the context of our development code?
I don't know our development code.
And I think these are the types of discussions. These are the types of discussions that must occur. Yeah, and they have to occur. And I'm all for partnering, but we expect partnership from our counterparts at the county as well. The other thing I think is vitally important to these programs is outreach to our faith community. I know that we have other groups that are seeking to be involved in assisting in terms of addressing the homeless challenge we have and connecting those individuals to services. I saw there was an item about outdoor showers. It looks like that's going to be deferred. My big question is, how do you manage a program like that? So we spend money on establishing these facilities, but is there any plan in terms of how they're going to be managed, how they're going to be administered? Are we going to leave this to the police? Are we going to leave this to city staff? Are we going to partner with some of those local faith-based organizations, community-based organizations? As it stands tonight, I will be a no vote as to the $1.3 million in home funds going to 450 North G Street. I would invite the county and those other organizations that are involved in these negotiations. We needed to be engaged early on. We have a community development director. We put a lot of time and effort into the process of soliciting proposals for the redevelopment of these key areas in our downtown. And we need to be engaged in terms of how we are going to coordinate the funding that we are getting to ensure we address the homeless population and address these homeless challenges, but do it in a way that is consistent with the need to redevelop our downtown. So I will be voting no on the $1.3 million home allocation this evening until we get engagement from the county. And
if I may, so the $1.3 million is not just for 450 G Street, it's for the two projects combined. Additionally, if we are going to address homeless issues, there has to come a point at which we make a decision to house folks. Providing services, showers, and so forth,
and we have to be engaged in terms of the location of that. We don't get an email on a Friday afternoon, oh, by the way, this is already going to happen. We didn't really get engaged. We weren't really consulted on this. It just happened, and you're just going to have to deal with it. That's not the way government should engage with each other. We should be in did this ever come forward at the Interagency Council on Homelessness? Did this matter? Did this location, was it discussed?
Not,
Who made
not
the
that we're
decision?
aware.
Who
That's
made
not,
the
that's
decision?
not where that's not where it would be
It was
discussed.
not discussed.
That's not where it would be discussed.
Where will it be discussed?
Well, I think if you
Will
look
the
at
city
the
ever be
location right
engaged in these
now,
decisions?
excuse me, if you look at the location right now, I believe that if you were to look also at the types of projects the county has done in housing, it would be an incredible improvement of what is there. And if it's intensively managed, as we have discussed with the county, no one would know what the use is.
Well, these are decisions that have to be made in context with community development. Was community development at all engaged in
No.
the potential location?
No, for the benefit of the city council. So when we had a conference call with the county this past week, it was unbeknownst to us that they had been looking at it for some time. So they were way ahead of them.
That's simply not acceptable. And that's not collaboration. That's not partnership.
Yeah.
That's imposition. And that to me is misappropriation of public funds if the local jurisdiction has not been engaged and consulted in terms of the location of a 76 room facility. Do we have any idea who the residents of this facility will be? Will it be only for city-based homeless individuals, or will it be for county-wide homeless individuals? What will be the guardrails in terms of who's eligible to be there?
If the city were to provide dollars, yes, we could get rooms in there for our residents. If the city does not provide dollars,
Will it all be for ours or
project will
just a
go
portion?
forward without our residents, without any priority for people in the city.
I will not be approving this tonight. We need to be engaged. We need to be partners, and we need to have these discussions. To me, this is a unilateral decision that is potentially could torpedo the downtown redevelopment.
Thank you, Councilman Nickel. Very good points you make, sir. I think we need to be part of it. That's concerning to me. As I read, I do respect. Let's continue the dialogue. Let's be respectful of our staff, and let's allow them. The city manager, you kept raising your hand. Let's take a quick little break. City manager, you had some.
I was actually just going to reiterate what Mike had told you. They reached out to us probably less than a week before their application was due, and we did express concerns, particularly with G Street. We told them what we had going on and the development we had going on. Now, the other location is on Pacific Street, which is already operated by the Salvation Army, and we were agreeable to that. And then all of a sudden, we got the applications that they had submitted.
Okay, all right. Councilman Mulvihill, sir, you've had your hand raiser.
Yes. Now, actually, I agree with what Councilman Nickel had to say. And regarding the location, we need, again, as I said, we need closer collaboration with the county, and that's why I mentioned the partnership. But also we need to, if we're going to develop homeless facilities, it really needs to be away from residential areas, needs to be away from our commercial areas. And maybe if there's no motels that we can buy, look into building new facilities. I mean, they don't have to be if we don't go for low-income housing tax credits, we don't have to have prevailing wages, and we don't have to meet the greenhouse gas standards of the city of the California. That's what's causing all the expenses in LA that measure HH, in which you're spending about $600,000 per unit. And so what I'm saying is that, again, closer collaboration, but the point is we need to build facilities outside on the periphery of the city, away from residential areas and commercial areas that are going to be affected. The county has got, I've been looking at the area over by, where the Sheriff's Academy is. They've got a lot of open space out there. I'm looking also at the fact that the Miller-Boise decision, we have to provide space for these people, otherwise they can sleep in public spaces. Now, also, as I mentioned before, we've got 820, and probably more, but that's the point in time count, found 820 unsheltered people that we've got to house. And so it's an immediate problem. We've got it right now. And look, the news out of Casa Ramona, that fire that started last week and destroyed it, was started by a homeless person finding shelter. And the county is not closely collaborating with it. I think you all read the memo today from Mike Huntley about the First American Title Company, that the county took that over and it's turned into public defenders. It's off our tax rolls now. So the county came in, has taken away some of our property taxes, and we didn't know a thing about it until they needed some off-site improvements made. So we need to go to the county and have a closer collaboration. What we got now is obviously not working.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Mulvihill. Thank you, sir. Councilman Charette, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to ask Basine, I know that you sit on that ICH board, and of course, that will be changing the first of the year. Who is the alternate? Who is your alternate?
It's Maria Gallegos, the staffer for the city.
Okay. And I don't know Maria exactly, but along
He's a city staff member.
Oh, that's fine. And I respect staff immensely. They get the job done. But when we're talking about collaboration or partnerships, this is high level partnerships with counterparts. Josie Gonzalez has started ICH, and she'll be leaving at the end of this year. So the ICH, I think there's enough organization there that it's going to remain and continue. But she's been the driving force there, and we're not certain of that. And that's at a much more global view of all the agencies throughout the county, the entire county. Other than crime in general, the homeless issue is the single most important issue to the electorate here in San Bernardino. Again, aside from crime itself, and of course, homeless issues do contribute to that, the homeless issue is probably the most important issue if we were going. In fact, I think we did it. I think it was in a survey. And with all due respect to Basine, who's been sitting on that board, I did sit on that board, and Virginia Marquez, and we sat on that board, and we tried to get our housing people there, and it really, we didn't get a lot of traction there. And again, with all due respect to my colleague, I don't know that we're getting a lot out of it right now. And I think if we're going to have an alternate and we want a politician involved, that's fine. Let's have an alternate politician that can attend those meetings and listen and hold staff, or in this case, a high-level staffer that is really a counterpart to Tom, I think it's Hernandez or
Hernandez. Tom Hernandez.
I'm sorry?
Hernandez.
Yeah,
Hernandez.
Tom Hernandez, a counterpart to Tom, or a counterpart to the highest level at the county, i.e. city manager and CEO at the county, or a housing at the county and housing at the city. The highest level of directors should be involved with this issue. And as far as PD and the quality of life team, that's all good and well. But, and again, I say all these things with all due respect to everybody that's working on this issue, but this is going to take a relationship built and us demanding as the county seat and the largest city with the largest problem in the county of San Bernardino to tell the county, and I'm sorry again with all due respect, if we had relationship building, we wouldn't be getting blindsided on a Friday afternoon that, oh, by the way, we're going to tear down the First American Title building. We need to be,
Fred, you're absolutely right. One of the things that I did request is to make sure PD was a part of that team.
Okay, fine.
The whole team is all about the sheriff's department.
Why
is not San Bernardino PD a part of that team? And I tried to get them involved. I made sure that we had our housing team involved because they're the ones that are the experts.
But see, I agree with you. I agree with you completely. I sat on that board, and I know I sat on there at the specific request.
You know, it's a fight for the funding. Everybody's fighting for that funding.
I know it. That's why I'm saying we've got to go outside the lines, and we've got to develop a relationship, and we've got to develop a relationship with the top levels at the county to get this issue handled. That would be the mayor, the housing director, the city manager. I'm not sure who it is. I'm not pointing the finger at any one person or anyone, but that's the level that this has to come up. This has to be a #1 priority. You've got a city manager that's going to be leaving soon, apparently, and so this is something we should be talking about going forward, that this needs to be at the top of the list of the mayor and council and the management of the city of San Bernardino to get this under control. And again, I stress, with all due respect to Gretel and her team and anyone else, and Basine, and was it Maria, did you say?
Maria.
Yes. I understand all that, but I sat on that board for over a year, and we didn't get any traction. And that board meets once a month, and we're not getting any reports back as a council as to what's going on there. We're spending 2 hours a month there, and we don't know what's going on. And I don't think, with all due respect to Basine, that the idea of taking over the First American Title building or developing a motel, I don't think that's being discussed at the ICH meetings. So I think I've made my point that we need to go outside of the ICH, and it's got to be a one-on-one relationship at the highest level between the city of San Bernardino and the county of San Bernardino to get this homeless issue under control, and have everybody else just supporting the kind of negotiations that, again, those two high executives can come to terms with. And it's relationship building, and that's all it's about, is relationship building and making sure that we're at the table. And if we're not getting invited, we need to be sticking our nose under the tent and saying, when are these meetings coming up? When are you making these decisions? We insist that you include us. Now, it obviously has to be done in a tactful way, but
we're not invited to the table at that point. But what they were looking for was groundbreaking projects.
Shovel ready
projects that they could get off the ground really quickly. So to Gretel, what happens to this funding if we should not approve this tonight? Because I know that the funding they were looking for shovel ready projects, and they did look into the city of San Bernardino. Maybe we believe that it's not the right place, but is there another shovel ready place where we agree, instead of building from the ground up, where we can go in and apply for these grants and get it off the ground?
The county council member was not looking for funding from us. The county, they were, like I said, they had been in conversations with the developer, who was already in conversations with this owner to purchase this property on 450, and they had been in conversations with the Salvation Army. The county themselves is going to be putting in about $12 million. I think it's just in the 450 property for permanent housing. I don't quite remember what they're putting in on the other property. So as far as our dollars are concerned, if the council does not want to use them for permanent housing, then we would need to come back. That would be, you know, this application then to HUD would have to be changed. And we would probably, I would have to talk to my HUD rep to see if I come back to you at another public hearing to approve another application. It delays our funding significantly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, council members. Any council member, first, second, third ward council members? We've had significant chatter from Councilman Sanchez. Yes, sir.
You know, so I don't know if we've addressed this, but I would like the county to come before us and maybe explain themselves. Is that a possibility? If the staff could reach out to the county.
For the ESG funding.
Absolutely, yes.
Sure, we'd be happy to bring them, invite them to a future council meeting.
Yes.
This happened really quickly because you guys know that COVID-19 affected us really quickly. And so I think that they tried to put something in place to immediately serve the needs of the city of San Bernardino, because we said we have the highest rate of homelessness in the county of San Bernardino, and they did look into San Bernardino. And when you start putting projects together and you start submitting RFPs, RFQs, you know it takes time to put that together. They, like I said earlier, they were looking for shovel-ready projects. And I say that I was really happy the fact that they told me that they were looking to the city of San Bernardino. So we, at that point, were included where we were not included before. We might not like the project, but it was a shovel-ready project. And like Gretel just said, we're going to lose significant funding if we do not approve this.
I have a question.
The dollars coming out of state for HomeKey, the application was due August 13th for the tier 1, and the project has to be closed by December 30th. So Councilwoman Richard is correct in the sense that there was a very short window of time for any jurisdictions in the city, in the county, or anywhere in the state really to move on these dollars. So we need to consider that as well.
Gretel, point of clarification, you're saying the deadline for HomeKey was, did you say August 13th or
That's
July
right.
3rd?
August 3rd.
Okay, so that was this past Thursday. So we submitted
We did not.
the county.
The county did.
County did. Okay.
And they had to submit it by then, and the dollars, the purchase has to be closed by December 30th, and the project has to be in operation 90 days post that.
Okay. And I mean, you bring up some good points here. If they're going to invest $12 million into this motel conversion at 4th and G Street, now's the time. I think you're hearing from council members that we're $12 million conversion. Does that have to go through Planning Commission, Mr. Huntley? Any of those improvements and conversions? You're muted.
You're muted.
You're muted, Mr. Huntley.
Sorry about that. So anyway, so based on our understanding, this would be permanent supportive housing, would be just like any multifamily residential projects. Would have to go back in and look at our code, look at the development code, and make sure that's a permitted use at that density on the property first. But again, so then this would also have to go through building plan check for the conversion. So I have to get all the plans, specs put together and submitted. And this is an awfully tight time frame to get everything through the process and done so they can meet those deadlines. So.
Well, Ms. Ledoux, I think we've had this conversation before. We've directed letters of opposition. Ms. Ledoux, you've done a great work at filing those complaints with Gary McBride and his team. Why then are we still continuing this? If the council has objected in the past and they have to go through this process.
They have county pocket property.
The county's exempt. The county's exempt. Look what they're doing at.
So Terry, can you address that, please?
The TAD building.
This project's a little bit different because it's actually a developer buying the property, and the county's just going to give the funding from the HomeKey program.
Can they?
Yeah, I have a question.
They
If
should
I
look
may.
at their own county pockets.
Councilmember Nickel. Councilmember.
Yeah, we have order. I've a couple quick questions. First of all, can we require an MOU with the county before we allocate our funding to them or allocate any money that otherwise comes to the city to supplement their funding? Can we require an MOU that requires them to engage with us, to communicate with us, to coordinate with us?
With regard to the funding, we're required to enter into an agreement for the use of the funds.
I mean, on a going forward basis. I don't like to get these 11th hour requests. Oh, you either spend it or you can't use it. I want to have an MOU in place that ensures, it sounds like they've been negotiating for quite some time. We haven't been engaged. We need to start pushing back and putting some teeth in a process that says, look, if you want to use this money, we're going to allocate this funding that needs to be utilized to benefit our community and address these challenges. We want to make sure that you're committed to partnership and engagement, not just a Friday afternoon phone call. Oh, by the way, we're going to do this, and we've already committed $12 million, so there's really not much you can do about it. But we'd appreciate if you throw a $500,000 or so our way. That's just not partnership. That's not good engagement. And I'd like to see an MOU. I know in the context of other organizations, MOUs exist that ensure that there's a clear understanding in terms of what the engagement will be and that we're going to coordinate going forward. Can we do that?
I think that gets back to what Councilmember Mulvihill was referring to about some sort of a cooperation agreement. I guess you could term it an MOU, that sort of thing.
Because I think meetings are great, but you need to have some teeth.
Yeah.
You need to have something in writing. And
More
I think
formal.
an MOU, I think going forward, especially on the homeless issue in the city, the challenges we have, we need an MOU with the county. We need MOUs with these other entities that are operating in the city. We got to start collaborating. I don't care if it's managing showers or it's building supportive housing. We've got to have a coordination and not just talk. I think the talk has gone on for a long time and we need some teeth. The last thing I would ask is, Mr. Huntley, I know we put a moratorium on social service facilities until we got our code updated. What is the status on that? I understand that this 450 North G Street is within 600 feet of an otherwise residentially zoned area. What is the status of that buffer, and have we defined social services and do wraparound services, as will likely be provided at this facility, constitute social services in the context of our development code?
So for the benefit of the city council, the draft is done. We're scheduling it for planning commission, and it'll come to city council. So we'll spend some time talking about what constitutes social services, what constitutes housing, and what constitutes wraparound services. As a council member is aware, there's a lot of new housing legislation coming down from the state of California. We've been trying to keep up with it. So when we bring the code amendment back to planning commission and council, it's consistent with state law. And usually, if we're talking about a strictly housing project that has supplemental services, that would be considered a housing project. But again, without getting more facts in regards to what they're going to be utilizing that property for, it's hard for us to be able to look at specifically, does that constitute social services or not? You know, the county hasn't really been forthcoming with some of the additional details on that property.
And to be clear, it's a developer-owned property. It's not a county-owned facility, right? So the county does the county have preemptive right on a privately developed site?
Again, they're providing funding for the project site. My understanding is they would not be preempted.
Like the TAD building facility that we had that's, clearly a county building, even though they're leasing it. The other concern I have is when, as pertains to that site, what is the process going forward? When do they have to submit? They say they have the end till the end of September to do this. Are they going to get through our process by the end of September?
Well, they haven't submitted anything formally to us, so we haven't had a chance to look at their conceptual plans, evaluated based on the development code, and that's the first step. And then after that, we can determine whether or not it's a use by right or requires a conditional use permit. And then, and then in addition to that, you're talking about
just to be clear too, the moratorium is still in place for social services in the city, right?
You are correct. And then the
Okay.
other part of it is just the plan check submittal. You're talking about converting a hotel over to a residential use, but again, there's all the new ADA standards that would apply too. So and again, I'm a little concerned with their timing, getting through the process, getting the plan check approved, and then getting the tenant improvements done on that building too. So I mean, it's the time frames are really tight on this, which is what Gretel had explained. I'm not sure they'll make it through the time frame, to be honest with you.
I would like to
Point of
put forward a
clarification.
substitute motion. I would like
clarify
to.
something.
Oh, hold on, Councilman Nickel. Ms. Noble, go ahead, please.
I may have misspoken. I don't know where the September date came from, but the grant requires that acquisition occur by December 30th. So I'm sorry if I misspoke and said September. And then subsequent to December 30th, the grant requires that the project be occupied 30 days, so sometime probably in March or early April.
90 days.
December 30th. Okay.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry if I miscommunicated.
Ms.
Okay.
Noble, you're suggesting that acquisition, meaning the transference and sale of the motel to the private developer.
Yes, sir.
Wow. Okay.
Wow. I would like to put forward a substitute motion. I simply cannot approve the home program funding. I'm okay with the balance. I'll defer to some of my other council members.
I second that. I second.
Yeah, let's pull out the 1.3 million in home program funding until we can get the county here and those partners in this project. We need to know what's going on.
Okay, very good. That's your substitute with the second
Yeah.
by Mayor Pro Tem. Yes, City Manager.
I just wanted to clarify, Gretel, wasn't there 2 projects for the 1.3? The one on
Yes,
Pacific
there
Street?
is the 2626 Pacific.
Can we pull out the 2626 as a unique item? I'm okay with 2626 Pacific. That's an existing facility. I got no problem with it.
There's a way to split out that money?
We can go ahead, depending on our layering analysis, we could probably put all of the money into that project.
Well, I want to make sure that we're not using this money to fund
Right.
the G Street project.
Right.
I would need assurances of that.
That would depend on I guess, on your recommendation, on your direction to me then.
Well,
Okay,
then,
well, I will make that
Councilman Nickel,
recommendation.
why don't we just, instead of investing the $1.3 million, why don't we just say in your motion that with the exception of 4th and G,
450 G Street.
right, that
Yeah.
that apportioned amounts go to 2626. We still will have a carryover balance remaining. That way we don't.
I'm okay specifying that no funding go to 450 North G Street until, maybe it's a great project. Maybe they're going to do great things, but we have.
And I would amend my second on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
So we exclude 450 North G Street.
Now,
And
Ms.
Henry-
Ms. Noble, that doesn't mean that we invest all 1.3 in Pacific. We just apportion and segment what's blessed. Is that right, Mr. Nickel?
Well, if we can find another place for it, or if the county comes forward and explains themselves and can justify and work with us, I'd be willing to reconsider that potentially. But as of right now, I cannot approve.
Okay, so Ms. Noble, you have direction with that motion. I think are you clear on that? 2626 gets the funding, but not all 1.3.
So the way the home program works is there is a cap on the amount that we can invest on per unit. So we'll work through those numbers.
Okay.
And see what the cap
Okay.
is.
Okay, very good.
And Henry, part of your proposal is that there's going to be MOUs, closer collaboration in the future.
I agree. I think that needs to be a separate item that comes forward, but I just can't be giving the county any more money.
Understood.
given the history we have.
Understood.
And the conduct and behavior, unless we've got an MOU that
Okay,
says,
very
look,
good.
we're going to work together.
Thank you. Councilman Charette, sir,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Thank you. I have a couple of comments. Number one is that we're talking about this as if this is the only project we're ever going to do. And I know that we're all kind of not happy that this came about. And that's why I'm talking about in the future, developing a relationship. And I would have to say that under the charter, the mayor is the intergovernmental affairs leader on that. So it would be out of the mayor's office to be developing relationships with the county executive officer and or the city manager. I'm just talking about top level people from our city working, and so that we develop a relationship. We want to encourage the county to spend as much money as they can in our city to help us with these problems. We just don't want it shoved down our throat.
Right.
We don't want it to come at the 11th hour that we're going to take this property whether you like it or not. We want to have them say, you know, hey, we're thinking about 6 months down the road, we're going to have this $12 million, and how do you think we could use it in your city? That's where we need to be talking now about 6 months or a year. And then with COVID, this is totally out of the ordinary because everyone's shoving everything through as fast as they can. Now, having said all that, I think I can support this. I have a legal question of our city attorney, and that is, I have no financial interest in the Salvation Army, but I am on an advisory board of the Salvation Army. And of course, I'd love to see this money go to them. I think they're a great organization. Do I have any conflict of interest?
The general rule is that if you are not a member of the actual executive board and you are not receiving a salary, you would not have a conflict. I generally advise that when you are working with someone in a volunteer capacity, that maybe out of an abundance of caution that you not participate. You have participated this evening by the mere fact that you've been in the conversation already. So,
well, but it's outside of it. It's for the future and everything else. But I'm not gonna take your advice this time because I do not have a conflict of interest. It's an advisory board, and because I have had so much to say about it, I'm gonna go ahead and vote.
Okay.
I have no financial interest or whatever, and it's a sub board and advisory board only. I'm not on the executive
board. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Charette, for that clarifier. I'm going to go to the city clerk. Don't forget, we have one public comment. Ms. City Clerk, are you there? And is our public comment speaker ready?
Yes, let me just start the timer. 1 second. Ms. Gallegos, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, you can start addressing the council.
Hello, Mayor, council members. My name is Luz Gallegos. Calling on behalf of our San Bernardino members. We're asking to please support rent relief. We have a lot of families that have not been working for a long time and are tremendously behind on rent, and no income is coming in. We would like, we're asking for your support for the funding that you all have received to allocate money to rental relief, knowing that there's families that haven't paid the rent in over 4 months, and with the moratorium coming up in September, people are not going to have money if they haven't saved any money to be able to pay over 3-4 months of rent. So we're asking to please support rent relief. Thank you and good night.
Thank you very much. Ms. Noble, I do have a question on that. The rent relief program that you propose here, how do we ensure that the payment is actually directed, maybe not to the constituent, but are there ties so that we pay off the direct payments to the landlord?
Mm-hmm.
I would hate that it's washed through the hands of a true needy family, and yet it's somehow earmarked for a car repair or something. How do we ensure that the intentional efforts of this city council is to really pay the landlord direct, so that we can assist true families here?
The program is set up so that we have to have a lease from the person that is applying, and then we have to have a confirmation from the landlord that that person is their tenant and how much rent is owed. The check or an ACH payment will be made directly to the landlord in the name of the tenant.
Good.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, we have a motion. We've had some discussion, and we appreciate council members. Thank you. Ms. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa is absent. Councilmember Charette.
I believe Councilmember Figueroa is here.
He's here. Okay, thank you. Member Figueroa, your vote.
I will be abstaining from this one simply because I didn't gain access until sometime in the middle. And I need the record to reflect that I was present. I have not been absent. I was physically present at Veneer Tower. I was there for closed session. I was physically present to cast a vote, but I didn't have an equivalent opportunity to do so.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Figueroa, and we'll note the record. We appreciate you, sir. Thank you. Please proceed, Ms. City Clerk.
Councilmember Charette,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard,
Yes.
and Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 6-1, showing Councilmember Figueroa abstaining from the item.
Okay, thank you very much. I now close the hearing at 9:38. We have the deliberation action. We have the motion and as reported by City Council. I'm sorry, by your City Clerk. The next item before us tonight is consent calendar. And we will go around the table here. Just a moment, please. We will ask council members to for any polls on any items tonight. Beginning with Mayor Pro Tem, sir.
Yes, I'd like to pull item 15.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Yes, I have a question on number 8. I'd like to pull number 9, 11, and 13 for a separate vote. And number 18, 15. I want to pull 15 and number 18 also.
Okay.
For
All right. Just a point of order, Ms. Ibarra. You mean 9, 11, and 13 for a separate vote? What is your request?
Yes, 9, 11, 13 for separate votes.
I'm not. Okay. Well, we'll get to it, I guess. Councilmember Figueroa, sir, go ahead.
11, 15, and 16.
11, 15, and 16. So noted. Councilmember Charette.
Mine was pulled number 11.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Councilmember Nickel.
My items are pulled.
Thank you. Councilmember Richard.
My item was pulled.
And then Councilmember Mulvihill.
Mine have been pulled. Move the rest.
Second.
All right. Are there any objections? All right. So ordered. We'll go around the table, please, to just a point of order. Councilman Nickel, what items, so I can recognize you appropriately, what item did you want to pull, sir?
Item 9.
9. Is that it?
Yes.
Councilmember Richard, you had a item to be pulled. What was it?
15.
Thank you. And Councilmember Mulvihill, sir.
Mine were pulled.
What are they?
The number 9 and number 15.
Thank you. That way I can not pass over you and recognize you at the appropriate time. Thank you, sir. Moving on to a question from Councilmember number 8. I'm sorry, Councilmember Ibarra on item number 8. Ma'am, did you we're trying to keep it real.
I just had a quick question.
Did you notice the city manager on your question on item number 8?
No.
Okay, please going forward, we ask that you council members make that advance question to our city manager. But go ahead, Ms. Ibarra.
Sure. How much more are we going to expect increasing the funding that we're giving to the LER Auto Electric? Is this a one-off increase?
Councilmember, I don't quite understand your question.
It's saying we're going to issue a purchase order in an amount not to exceed 120, and then issue another one for Fairview Ford not to exceed 84,000. I'm just wondering if there's any more funding that we're going to need to increase after this.
So, Councilmember, this is the grant from the San Manuel tribe, and this is specifically to purchase one police vehicle, one CSO vehicle, and that's the purchase order to Fairview Ford. And this is to outfit for the vehicles that we For the 6 vehicles we have with San Manuel with automatic license plate readers, and that's to the Lair Automotive.
Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
Is there a motion for approval?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Councilman Mulvihill, Councilmember Ibarra, and if there's no objections, no further questions, it is so ordered by consensus. Moving on to item number 9. Councilmember Ibarra, you said that you'd like to separate the item 9.
Correct. Just take a separate vote.
I'm not.
That's
Okay,
it.
so move for approval, somebody? Motion for approval
Move to approve.
on the floor motion. Is there a second?
Second.
By Councilmember Richard. Are there any objections to it?
I got a question.
Councilmember Mulvihill.
Now, these cars are going to be tricked out for the COVID-19. Now, the COVID-19, presumably, if we follow the science, there's going to be a vaccine available towards the end of the year. And once the vaccine's available, and take a few months for everybody to get inoculated, we're not going to have COVID-19. So why do we need cars tricked out, especially for COVID-19?
So, council members, this was a grant specifically to mitigate the effects of COVID-19 that was provided to us by the federal government. We don't know when there will be a vaccine, if there will be a vaccine. So this is to mitigate the effects of COVID-19 on our employees. So what this will be is 5 vehicles that will be purchased that have had software upgrades to allow them to be heated internally to in the excess of 130 degrees, which will then presumably kill the virus that, if present in the vehicle. And these will be specifically used to transport people who are exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19. And then there's some aftermarket things that we're going to actually apply to separate the 2 cooling systems as you're transporting a prisoner, and to cause some better separation between the officer in the front and the suspect in the rear of the vehicle.
Well, the CDC is pretty confident that there's several vaccines that are in stage 3 studies, and they're pretty confident that there's going to be a vaccine by the end of the year, first part of next year. How much extra does the over the price of your basic car does the COVID-19 resistance features cost?
The vehicles from Ford are virtually the same. It's just a software upgrade that overrides the temperature in the heating system of the vehicle, so it allows it to heat. It'll maintain the heat of excess of 130 degrees for 15 minutes. The cost of the vehicle in and of itself is basically the same because it's only a software upgrade on the vehicle. That being said, there is some aftermarket stuff I think is very minimal to cause a better separation between the front of the vehicle and the rear, and then also to install air conditioning ducts that go directly to the rear to separate, so we don't have to have the air circulate in the vehicle between the front and the rear to cool it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Council and Chief McBride, this is how many total vehicles then?
5.
5. Okay, and this is grant funded?
Correct. This specifically, we submitted a grant to the federal government for COVID-related items, and this we specifically looked for something to counter the effects. We've had several prisoners that we've transported over the last several months that have been COVID-19 positive.
Okay.
And of course, we have to have a safe environment to transport those individuals to jail.
Both our police officers as well as the individual.
Correct.
Okay, open it up to final questions. Councilman Charette and Councilman Nickel. Go ahead.
Thank you. And so, Chief, it sounds to me, and I don't know if you've got an actual number you can put on that, just that COVID portion, but it's albeit taxpayer money. It's all taxpayer money we're dealing with, but it's not coming out of our general fund. It can't be used anywhere else. It's going to be a benefit to these 5 cars and to us going forward, whether COVID lasts for 4 months or 10 months. And I'm hearing you say that the number really is pretty nominal or minimal as to what the COVID upgrade is going to cost those 5 cars.
Correct. The vehicle is virtually the same coming from Ford. It's just the upgrade in the software for the heating, for the heater in the vehicle, and then there's some other aftermarket stuff.
It's not spelled out as it's going to cost another $450 per car. It's not spelled out that way.
We're in the process of we have some ideas, and we're actually soliciting from some vendors some ideas for that aftermarket stuff that'll be applied, some surfaces that are easier to clean out. So that cost is to be determined, but will be funded through the grant.
It'll be funded through the grant, and it's basically pretty nominal.
Yep.
Correct.
When you compare it to the entire cost of the vehicle.
Correct.
And the safety feature for both the person being transported and particularly our officer.
Absolutely. And the vehicle will be used to transport prisoners that aren't COVID-19. So
Sure.
it's extra vehicles that were being provided that are COVID-19 resistant, but they'll be in our inventory fleet.
Were the 5 vehicles, we were going to get those anyway?
No.
No.
No,
They
this is
weren't
all, the whole cost is coming out of the COVID grant money.
Federal dollars.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Fred, is that a motion for approval?
I'll make it, yes.
Thank you. Is there a second by Councilman Sanchez? I think we're good, folks, unless we got some final questions. If not, let's do a roll call vote. Ms. Rocha, please. Go ahead.
Councilmember Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
No.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Yes.
Councilmember Charette,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard,
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
The item passes 6-1.
Okay, the next item that was pulled by council members Ibarra, Figueroa, and Charette. Item number 11 is the Joe Gonzalez State Legislative Advocacy. And let's hear Mr. Charette. Go ahead, sir.
Isn't one ahead of me?
Chair recognizes you, sir. Go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you. Thank you very much. I'm just not going to support this.
Okay.
I didn't support it last year. I think we've got other places to spend our money. I've met with the Gonzalez's, and they're great people up in Sacramento. But I haven't seen anything except emails coming, giving us updates on legislation, and I think we can do that on our own. So I just won't be supporting the
Okay.
item.
Thank you, Councilman Charette. Councilmember Barr, go ahead, ma'am.
I actually have the same comments. I'll be voting no on this.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Figueroa, sir, go ahead.
Same thing. I'll be voting no simply because of the same things that Councilmember Charette alluded to earlier.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember. Now we have everybody wanting to talk. Okay, Councilmember Mulvihill, go ahead, sir.
Yes, I'm going to be voting against it for the same reasons.
All right, is there a move to table then?
I'd like to make a motion that we reject.
No, we're not tabling it. We're voting it down. Call for the question.
I'm saying to reject item 11.
Okay,
Second.
is that your motion?
Yes.
Councilmember? Okay, with the second by Councilman Charette. All right,
If I may, I'd like to put forward a substitute motion that we table until such time as the new city manager comes on board. I think we need to have the capability of engaging with our legislators and with the administration in Sacramento. We're dealing with a lot of matters here, folks, that go right up to Sacramento. in
Yeah,
terms
we
of
got
homelessness
assembly
and
people.
crime.
We got
Councilman
senators.
Charette, please, sir.
If I may, and I think I would like to give an opportunity to our potential city manager candidate to determine whether or not those services are in fact required or not. And I know that we should be moving forward, hopefully expeditiously, on coming to some finalization on that agreement for that city manager. These are critical services. Other cities utilize these services. And I think we want to make sure a city manager has the resources they need to be successful. I'd like to table this.
Councilman Nickel gives a substitute motion and that we hold off. Is there a support for that?
I'll second.
I second it.
Second support by Sanchez and Richard. All right, we have motion and conversation. Please, if you could mute your back lines, that'd be appreciative. Much appreciated, council members. We're just getting a little bit of feedback. All right, Ms. City Clerk, you have a substitute motion by both Nickel, second by Sanchez, and support with Richard. If you please call the roll on that substitute motion.
Yes. Councilmember Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
No.
Councilmember Figueroa,
No.
Councilmember Charette,
No.
Councilmember Nickel, Councilmember Richard,
Yes.
and Councilmember Mulvihill.
No.
And the vote is, Ms. City Clerk?
Does not pass. It's 3-4.
You have Councilmember Nickel and Councilmember Nickel, the line was muted. Was that a no?
Oh, I voted yes.
You voted yes. So it's 4-3 no, and that goes back to the
Primary motion. Let's go to the primary motion.
Hold on, Mr. Mulvihill. Just be patient, sir. I'm trying to conduct the meeting. Councilmember Ibarra had a a motion to reject item number 11 with support by, who was it, City Clerk?
I did.
Councilmember Charette.
Thank you, Ms. City Clerk. We'll call the roll on that to reject off item number 11. Please call the roll.
Okay. Councilmember Sanchez,
No.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Yes.
Councilmember Charette,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
No.
Councilmember Richard,
No.
and Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
The item passes 4-3.
Okay, the item passes to reject item number 11, and this is always an opportunity for us to have a conversation with the new city manager when and if the time comes for more tools and resources. But I would caution wisely. I think Councilman Nickel, you're onto something here that we need some resources. So we'll at a later date, we'll entertain that thought. But I hear you loud and clear, Councilman Nickel. Ms. Ledoux, yes.
I just want to make it clear that that funding will just stay in the account, and if you decide to do something with it later, it will be available.
All right, cool. Thank you. Moving on to item number, we had item number, 13, Councilmember Ibarra. What's the separation matter?
Yes. So my concern on this one is we had given them money back in 2016, and when was the completion of those 2 homes?
Ms. Ibarra, did you ask that question previous to this council meeting?
No.
Okay, we're not doing homework here at the council. We've asked council members to ask and address those questions to staff prior to the meeting.
Okay, then I'll just vote no on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion for approval?
Move for approval.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, Ms. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
No.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Yes.
Councilmember Charette,
I'm supporting my colleague that didn't get an opportunity to talk about it. No.
Councilmember Nickel,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard,
Yes.
and Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Thank
Motion
you.
passes.
The item passes. Item number 15, we had several polls. Councilmember Sanchez, Councilmember Ibarra, Councilmember Figueroa, Councilmember Richard, and Mulvihill. Let's go in order. Mayor Pro Tem, sir, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to move to go back to our original metric, our original formula of 1 license per 12,500 residents. And so I move to reintroduce the ordinance with that metric. I also understand some cities have process integrity standards that prohibit applicants from any direct contact with elected officials. These contacts can disqualify an applicant. My motion includes a direction to staff to include these integrity standards in the guidelines when those are presented to us. I'm asking for this because those who have sued us have accused us of being being involved in the process, and I want to ensure all applicants that we will be given a fair opportunity, that they will be given a fair opportunity to process permits. Finally, for those who complain that 17 is too many, all I can say is we shall see who really wants permits. 18 months ago, we gave 16 applicants a chance to move forward and open, and today only 2 are operating. So even with 17, we may only see half open. But that only time will tell.
And I
Okay.
second that motion.
Point of order. I'd like to, out of the abundance of caution, Ms. Carvalho, I'll go ahead and abstain on this, even though I don't have, but I will hand it over for this item only. Mayor Pro Tem, would you please take over and then invite me back in when this item is concluded? Thank you.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Miss City Attorney, please. Okay,
I
we
would
have a
just have
second.
Fine. Oh, yeah. Do you have a second for your motion? And I have a clarifying question for you.
Yes, I believe it was council member from the 6th Ward.
Okay. Just my only clarifying question for you is you had mentioned back the reference of the 12,500 standard, one license per 12,500. Under that standard, that's what you actually got when you set the number at 17. But I want to just be clear, are you wanting to go back to a total of 17? Are you just saying 17 retail plus remain with the unlimited other? Because that standard you mentioned would be a total of 17.
Sorry, no. So this would be a process that would be one retail license in the city per 12,500 residents.
Correct. And then and that would be with
And then we continue doing our
definition.
unlimited in the other business models.
And then
I think it's
we'd
important.
also stay with that definition of retail, which included the micro businesses, which
Absolutely.
incorporate retail. Okay, I got
It's
that.
important.
Thank you.
We really fumbled the ball here when we decided to stick our hands deep into this process. If we can automate this process by putting these measures in place, first of all, that it's automated where we do the measurements, and for every 12,500 residents, we have one license. So we're not coming up with some number that it should be more, it should be less, because we had a phone call from one person here or one person there, and that's why this is two-pronged. The second would be to have to put in place rules that would prevent elected officials from getting involved in the selection process. We need to automate this. This is a major venture that we stepped into, and we immediately took a misstep by having people come in, elected officials starting to get personally involved in this process. And we need to get away from that if we want to see this program successfully help our city.
Right, and at the same time, I that's why I seconded it. I think that we also need to put a definition on what we mean by retail, because with this COVID-19 situation, retail has changed. So we need to just identify what we mean about retail. You know, there's non-storefronts, there's storefronts. What do we really mean about retail going into this new age of COVID-19? Because we may never return back to where we've been. So we have to think about the future and think about how we think about retail.
Okay, I see Henry, but before that, anyone else need to speak right now? Because I can only see a couple of you guys. All right, Henry, go ahead, please.
Just real quick, we did have that public comment at the beginning of the meeting regarding the non-storefront retail. And Ms. City Manager, just to be clear, do we need to update our guidelines to reflect that, or does it get more or less included into the existing retail? Do we need to specify that at all in the context of our guidelines and our ordinance?
I'm going to ask Mike and Sonia to respond to that. Mike and or Sonia.
Let me chime in first, then I'll let Sonia. So
They're new state.
Correct.
Subcategories, or how does that work?
Well, I mean, so staff's impression is retail is retail. I mean, you know, we have retail that's allowed in micro business, then we have retail, which is storefront, right? So we really are keeping the category relatively open, to be honest with you, and not sticking just to strictly a storefront retail use by itself. We have a much broader category. Sonia?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, yeah, so I'm going to give you a much more technical response because it's the one I have to give you. Chapter 5.10 is an ordinance that was adopted by the people of the city of San Bernardino. And when an ordinance is adopted by the people, it can only be amended by the people. Doesn't matter whether state law changes, doesn't matter if your policies have changed, doesn't matter if the state has decided to redefine retailer. What your current retailer category is defined as, it's defined as a commercial cannabis business that offers cannabis products or devices for the use of, that's going on and on, for retail sale, including an establishment, whether fixed or mobile. So I think that may capture, that delivers pursuant to express authorization, cannabis and cannabis products as part of the retail sale, and where the operator holds a valid commercial business permit from the city, authorizing the operation of that retailer, as well as a valid state permit. So as long as what we're talking about, and I saw that public comment today, and I think to a great extent it will fit into this definition, then they would qualify here. But if you ever want to change these definitions, you're going to have to propose a ballot measure to your voters.
That answers my question. And then just to be clear, the market dynamics of a non-storefront versus a storefront retail. I mean, obviously there's an economic, there's a difference in terms of how they operate. And so I just want to make sure we have equity and fairness in our process, and that we accommodate the fact that there may be different types of retail establishments that operate differently, and the economics behind them are somewhat different as well.
And I think I do agree with Mr. Huntley to the extent that we have any room to make interpret our rules in a way that reflects the reality. We'll use common sense to do that, but we will have to remember to stay within these boundaries.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Theodore?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I could support the motion if you would put in that there'd have to be a 2,500 foot separation between any particular outlet. In other words, provide a individual outlet with a certain amount of land, a buffer between them and the next one. 2,500.
I would be fine with that. I would be fine amending my motion to reflect.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, again, just so that I'm so sorry to stop you there. Remember that you're acting under chapter 5.10, and that chapter only gives the city council two discretionary areas of authority: how many permits and what type of permits. That's what your ordinance says. To the extent that there are boundary requirements or distance requirements, those are set forth in the ordinance, and we would have to make sure that you have the authority to change them. Because if
the vote, you mean the voter approved ordinance, right?
The voter approved ordinance, correct. I just don't know. I mean, it's a lot of pages. I'm looking at it right now. So I would just have to make sure that that's something that you have authority over.
Well, if we have authority over it, can we put it in to the motion?
I think you can make that motion and you could give direction. I think I've heard one piece of direction is you'd like to look at some of those, I think they're like ethical standards or something. We can look into that, and we can also look to whether you can make the distance requirement work. And if you can, then we will incorporate them.
Thank you.
Well, I would say before we, well, okay. Yes, Henry, go ahead.
Oh, I think Councilmember Shred had his hand up first.
Oh, go ahead.
All right, thank you. I get a real kick out of hearing the word equity and fairness tonight. We wanted, with all due respect and fairness and equity and all this, we started this process, and albeit a very difficult process, we came up with a list. And to your point, Mayor Pro Tem, I'm not accusing you of talking to anybody, but that's why we've been bouncing around this board, because people have been talking to each other. And we settled this. We jumped around. We are opening ourselves up to more litigation. We seem to be running and acquiescing to the people that went through the process and didn't get a permit and then threatened us with legal. And so now we're just saying, okay, well, we don't want to deal with that legal, so we'll just open it up, which doesn't benefit the people that went through the process. There are going to be damages here. from the people that have approved, that were the first 10 retail establishments approved. There's going to be damages. And I've been consistent with the exception of one, and that was moving, I believe, Nibble This when they had a fire and a kind of an extenuating circumstance. And I wish I could take that back, because that vote back, because I think that's the only place I've been non-consistent. And that is, let's get the ordinance done the way we talked about it. We got 2 operating illegally. We've got 90 operating in the shadows or illegally, from what I'm told. Could be 50, it could be 60, it could be 190. The point is, we are not doing what we have. And we, if you look at the way this council operates, we are a split vote on almost everything we do, and that is not stability in this community. And we are telling the business community that you can come through here, go through a process, do what we ask you to do, and then when we decide it's not working, or somebody's feelings are hurt, or somebody didn't get the license they think they deserve, they just turn around and sue us, and then we acquiesce and we unlevel the playing field for the people that went through it in the first place. So this is outrageous that we've been up and down and over 18 months. We've done it with employees where we couldn't come up with a decision, and it took us time and time and time again. And I'm just laughing at this word equity and fairness. And then
Okay,
I'm also asking, wait a minute, I'm also going to ask a legal question. Can I, as an elected official, be told that someone can't call me and talk about a project that they want to deal with in this city? That sounds to me like
when it would come to a cannabis.
No, I'm not
applicant?
asking you, Theodore. You're not a lawyer. I'm not asking you.
Oh,
I'm
all right.
asking our attorney. If anyone can tell me that I cannot talk to a constituent or a business person or somebody that's working through a process in here, for any reason, I'm hoping that the council has some integrity and their
Okay.
votes aren't for
All
sale.
right. Yeah, Fred, let's go ahead and open it up to some other council members. Sandra, you've been
I
waiting a
don't
while.
like being cut off, Theodore. I don't like being cut off. Okay?
Well, we're gonna
I
allow
haven't had
everyone to have
questions.
some time, okay? We just
There-
want
we
to
go all night long. That's the job we took.
Yeah, but
All
let's
night long.
go ahead and everyone.
But I
We'll
want
go
an
around
answer
and we'll
from
come
the
back to you.
attorney.
That's fine. That's
I
fine. We
want
can
an
come back to you.
answer from the attorney that I asked, specifically as to your motion that you're going to include that someone can't talk to me.
All right. I guess this
Sonia?
question is directed to the city, Miss
Where's
City
Sonia?
Attorney.
Yeah, so I believe that the city can adopt rules and regulations that govern its application process if it can demonstrate why there's a need to do that. There have been other communities that have adopted these kind of standards that simply say, because in the cannabis industry, there's always these accusations. I call them the sour grapes accusations. No matter who doesn't get a permit, they're going to complain. And the number one thing they always allege is, look, I was treated unfairly, or someone got a special deal and I didn't get that. And so one way that I think some have found to protect their cities against those kinds of charges and ultimately litigation is to simply say, while an application is pending, not always, but while the application is pending, if you make an ex-party contact, a contact with an elected outside of the normal process, and we find out about it, you can be disqualified. So it's really meant to help the city and to prevent really these allegations. They can still contact staff, but it's when they have direct contact with you. If that's not something you guys want to do, that's totally up to you. I think there are some cities that have chosen.
Okay,
this.
so Sandra, I know you've been waiting here. Let's go ahead and hear from you.
Okay. I would actually like to get an update from our community development planning department. The current list of those who did get those licenses back in February 2019, where they are currently with opening up and moving along, because they have had their license or permits given to them 18 months ago. For one of them who currently has a permit, his message said about some of us getting money from these applicants. I myself did not get any money from any of these applicants. That's a false allegation he made. And he got a permit. He's had 18 months, and he did call me. So how much time do they need to open shop? I need to find out where they are currently on the list of moving along. The 16 that got the permits in February. That was not in this report. And that, if you guys are okay, I would like to table this for a later date, maybe the next council meeting, with that information provided to us current.
Just for the benefit of the council, this is a second reading or final reading of an action you took at the previous meeting, and usually we wouldn't provide that data, but all things being equal, if that's the direction of council, we can provide that at the next meeting.
Henry, you wanted to speak?
Yeah, I had a question on the status of the guidelines that we, where are those guidelines? Obviously, we also approved some modifications that would allow for potential CUP process, the requirement of a surety bond. Where are we at with that? We also will be granting micro business licenses to those retailers that open before August 31st. Is that still in place, Ms. City Attorney?
How to be changed?
So we have worked with staff. We do have draft guidelines, but quite frankly, council member, and with all due respect to the city council members, I was very reluctant to bring those guidelines forward and have you adopt them as a resolution without you getting a second reading on this ordinance, because somehow I just knew that we might have some challenges. And if we had done that, we would have ended up with inconsistent guidelines. So you can't put the cart before the horse. We really need to get you to do the first two.
So
items.
once we get through the second reading on this ordinance, we will have those guidelines coming forward.
Yes.
Based
So
on
our
the,
plan,
the requests that were made of council when we first started this process.
you may remember that when I gave you the report the last time during the first reading, that was one of the things I said, is that we would be bringing it back to you. But after I knew that you had made that other change, we would have normally planned to bring those guidelines together with this right now. But I just wanted to make sure that you guys were going to do this. It even sounds like tonight, based on the motion that's been made, that's a significant change, and that's a reintroduction. That means it's a new first reading.
And then just to wrap it up, could we require, if we're going to grant a micro license to a retailer, I mean, we're basically, we're doing something above and beyond what the existing requirements were. What I know there was an issue related to litigation that an applicant that's currently in litigation with the city is not eligible, or how does that work? What are the guidelines?
Well, one of the rules that we're proposing for the guidelines is that as we move forward in the process, just depending on whether people who are currently in litigation with us, if they choose, for example, we had one plaintiff that just walked away from their lawsuit recently. But if they were to choose, for example, to say, hey, I want to get back in the process under the new guidelines, one of the things that we will require is that you can't apply for a new permit if you're currently in litigation with the city. I think that's a reasonable standard. If we're going
what
to
about existing applicants that are in that initiate litigation with the city?
If they haven't, if they're in the process, we can't retroactively make that apply to them, right? Because they're already in the system.
Right. But if they want to if they want to convert their retail to a micro, could we require that if they want to make that conversion, that they have to abstain from initiating litigation?
I would say that one of the requirements we're going to have is that if you file for a new application, whether that's an application to convert because you got hit in time, whether that's an application to relocate, whether that's an application for a new permit, one of the things that we will say is that you cannot currently be in litigation. Now, of course, if they want to sue us with respect to that particular application, we can't take that right away from them.
Right.
But we can tell them these permits are not, no one's entitled to them. If they want to do business with us, they cannot currently be suing us.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
And I do have just so that Councilmember Ibarra, if you go back to the June agenda report, we do have that attachment, June 17th. It's the staff report, and I'm looking at the packet page number packet page 13 does have that chart. It lists each of the applications and their status. I don't believe that we've had any changes, and we probably need to ask Ms. Sanchez to verify that maybe tomorrow, but that's where you can find that list.
Correct, and we have given them deadlines from those stages since.
Correct.
That's what I need to look at.
I still have my floor motion. I have concerns though that with the that we may not be allowed to impose a 2,500 foot square radius around these businesses. We don't have a definitive answer on that.
I think I just read your ordinance, and it seems to me like I could work with Mr. Huntley because your ordinance does not appear to govern the land use or the zoning requirement. So we probably could do that. What we want to do though is you would, if any of these current businesses are within 2,500 feet of each other, you're going to have to grandfather them in. And I don't know, Mr. Huntley, if any of them are that close together.
And that would be included in the guidelines?
That would be included in the guidelines. But Mr. Huntley would have to come back if you're going to do that as part of your zoning regulations. That would have to come back as a zoning code amendment because that's a land use standard.
So right now, the only question we would actually address is basically our total retail licenses in the city. And then what I had proposed, which is to forbid the electeds from communicating or involving themselves in the application process. I think, shall we take these items together? Well, I think we already have my motion and a second. If there aren't any other comments, Juan, any comments? Basine?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
I actually don't have an issue with the distance, just kind of a bit of a concern. 2,500 feet is approximately like a half mile or so. That's going to be a little bit difficult. I would, I'm thinking about, some type of boundaries like a freeway or anything that's, if they're separated by a highway, a freeway, they could be over a map, they could be really close to each other under that distance. But if they're separated by a freeway or some type of Caltrans owned property or something like that, it's, we have to take that into account as well. So I'm not completely opposed to some type of a distance, but we need to take that into consideration as well. The reason I pulled it was something completely different, but it sounds as though this is turning into a first reading, or am I interpreting that wrong?
Would this be a first reading? Or would
You
you
have
have
to
to redraft
have
a
a new first reading because it represents a significant change from the first reading.
Okay.
So you would be reintroducing this ordinance this evening. You'd have a second reading at your next meeting, and it would take effect 30 days later.
Okay. Well, we have them. So, all right. So we had Juan. That was your last comment, Juan?
Well, I had other comments.
Go ahead, please. No, please do.
It's what Sonia just said kind of changed some of my thoughts, so I'll reserve some of those thoughts.
Okay. Anyone else other than Fred? All right, Fred, you're up.
The question I have is, well, you've done a good job of putting me off, and I inadvertently have lost my question. But I know the question was, what does this do to the clock, to the calendar on the ones that we've already talked about for the August 31st operation, and for others that were given like 90 days to open or quit? And what does it do to the calendar with this? Does this reset everything?
No, those other items were adopted by the resolution that took effect immediately. We really wanted to get those into the guidelines just because we feel most comfortable with them in the guidelines, but those standards will apply. The only thing I can say is that because you haven't gotten to the guidelines, I don't believe we didn't immediately send out all these letters and all the things that we wanted to do. So we will see a delay, I think, on the timelines, but we won't see a delay on the August 31st. Anyone who qualifies for August 31st, the only thing that will happen is they're just going to have to take a deep breath while we get the application process in under the guidelines. But we'll be able to bring them to you in time that I, don't think that they're going to be standing at the doorway that, on September 1st. They're probably going to give us a week or two.
So we're behind on everything that we were going to try to do anyway. Is that what I just heard you say?
No, because if you had adopted this evening,
weren't we supposed to send letter? Oh, it would have been done based on tonight's second reading.
Yep.
That's right.
Okay,
so at your next meeting, we were going to bring you the guidelines, so they would be, and those go into effect immediately. So that at your next meeting, anyone who qualified for that micro business, for example, because they were done by August 31st, they would have had like a 2-day delay, and everybody would have been. It would all work. It's not a terrible thing. It means that you guys are making policy, and you had to change a policy. We're probably behind by 2 weeks now.
Well. And I'm unclear now as to where Jim's 2,500 foot barrier is with what Juan said. I'm unclear on that. Where are we on that?
I would go for 1,000. I'd be okay with 1,000 feet. That's fine.
Not enough. We've already got too much of a concentration down to the south end of town. And if you want to talk about equity and fairness, we ought to be up in the 4th Ward or the 5th Ward, giving some of our constituents the opportunity without having to drive clear downtown. If we're really talking about medicinal purposes for elderly and other people, there is no equity or fairness. We started with equity and fairness in the original process, and we have just munged it up all the way along and changed and up and down and back and forth. And it's a message we are sending to the business community, whether it be builders, whether it be marijuana, cannabis shops, retail shops, and I'm not going to support the item. This is just ridiculous what we've done and how we look.
Henry,
we look horrible as a city and as a council. I'm sorry.
All right, Henry, and then we'll wrap it up. We'll restate the motion, and then we'll take a vote. Henry?
Well, I was just going to say, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves on some of these distance requirements. It sounds like that needs to be addressed in the context of the guidelines. So I think that's a discussion that we need to continue. And I think I agree with Councilmember Charette. I think there is inequitable distribution of operations. I know one of the aspects of the guidelines that we requested is a potential CUP process. So if there is a particular area of the city that isn't currently subject or qualified under that buffer, that there's a process in which an applicant can engage that community and potentially locate if they get the approval to go there. So I think what we need to do, though, is stick with what we need to stick with tonight, and then work on those guidelines, because I hear my colleagues. I think we need to make sure we don't create a system that endangers the establishments that are already here and that have already made a significant investment. And we need to make sure that they're addressed.
So again, I'm gonna restate my motion. So my motion would be, again, to use the metric of one retail license, whether it be retail or a micro with a retail component, for every 12,500 residents, which would automate the process, as well as include that we prohibit electeds from involving themselves in the application process for any future applicants seeking to get a license in the city to sell cannabis. Whether it be retail, micro, distribution, whatever the case may be, no involvement. And so that's my motion. And I believe I had a second.
And you still do.
Oh, okay, Bastine. All right, let's go ahead and take a vote. City Clerk, can you please call roll?
Councilmember Sanchez?
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra?
To clarify, that was 17 retail and unlimited on the rest, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa?
Yes.
Councilmember Charette?
No, and we're opening ourselves up for more lawsuits. Trust me.
Councilmember Nickel?
Yes.
Councilmember Richard?
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill.
Very unfair process, no.
Motion passes 5-2.
All right. That completes all items on the agenda. So we'll move into the last portion of our council
Thank you,
meeting.
Mayor Pro Tem. I appreciate it.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Item number 16 was pulled. We have 2 more items on consent. Item number 16, pulled by Councilman Figueroa. This is a resolution approving Tetra Tech for Waterman landfill upgrades. Councilman Figueroa.
Yeah, and I just simply won't be supporting this item simply because this is another example of just, pardon the pun, but dumping money into a landfill here when there are other opportunities that have been expressed in a prime location here. And we just continue for, I guess, the last 5 years dumping money into this landfill. And there are other opportunities, and I don't see us. Well, I don't see why we continue to spend money on a landfill when there are other opportunities. So I'll be voting no on this.
If I may.
Chris, go ahead.
Councilmember Figueroa, respectfully, the item we actually have in front of you tonight is simply an award of a construction contract. Actually, it's the form of the agreement that we have with Tetra Tech that we're changing. This work is work that actually was previously approved back in September by the mayor and city council, and we are not asking for additional funding. It is phase 3 of the approved remediation plan that is required in order for us to come into compliance. So it really is just kind of a cleanup item. Initially, when the mayor and city council approved for Tetra Tech to do this work back in September, the work was anticipated under a professional services agreement. And due to COVID delays and the items that are detailed in terms of our permitting process, in the staff report, AQMD did not deliver our permits to get started on the project until late in June. So rather than extend a professional services agreement, we are looking to go ahead and just memorialize the work that is in progress and needs to be completed under a construction agreement at this time. So I just wanted to make that clear. This isn't a new project. It's not something that is unfunded that we're asking for any general fund or other monies for. So.
Okay, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right. Ms. City Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra.
No.
Councilmember Figueroa.
No.
Councilmember Charette.
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel.
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Right. The motion passes 5-2.
Okay, thank you. Item number 18 is Patent Basin Outlet Repair Change Order on consent calendar. Ms. Sabara, go ahead. You pulled it.
Just for a separate vote, Mayor.
I don't understand what that means. Are you saying you're not supporting it?
Move approval.
Thank
Second.
you. All right, thank you. I'm a little confused. Anyway, we'll talk later about it, Sandra. Motion for approval, and there's a second. Ms. City Clerk, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra.
No.
Councilmember Figueroa.
Yes.
Councilmember Charette.
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel.
Yes.
Councilmember Richard.
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-1.
Okay, thank you very much. Items to be referred, any issues?
As long as we had discussed about having the county come in and maybe explain that project that they had planned for 8th Street. If they can come in and explain to us and the people here in San Bernardino what they're thinking and the process was, I think it'd be a benefit to all of us.
Thank you,
I
Councilman.
will make the phone call tomorrow.
All right. All right. Any other items? Councilman Nickel, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question. When are we anticipating the item on the general plan update to be coming forward to the council? Do we know? And also the mall. I know that I've been getting a lot of questions on both the mall and the general plan update.
Well, the general plan's going to come first. We've scheduled interviews with the top consultants. We anticipate that coming to council second meeting in September, and then following up with the Carousel Mall after that.
Okay, so are we looking in September or October now, or when?
Probably the first meeting in October.
In October, okay.
Wait, to
And then I did
clarify,
get-
Mike, you're saying that the Carousel Mall will come back in October, the first meeting in October?
That's what we're scheduling it right
Okay,
now.
all right, very good. Councilman Nichols, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and then I did get requests from some of our committee and commission members. Do we have any, or do we anticipate when we may be able to start having discussions and meetings? I know they're very anxious to get back to work. You know, I think the Zoom is working. I understand the staffing considerations, but might we start incrementally pulling those individuals that have committed their time and their energy to helping us get them back on track?
No, I do appreciate that, and we really do want to bring them back as well. It sounds a lot less complicated than it really is. When we did the Measure Z committee, for instance, we don't have folks that always have access, plus we have to live stream them because we can't invite the public in. So it really does take an inordinate amount of staff time. So if you have a committee that's got a particular issue, maybe we could hold a meeting like Measure Z. We had to hold that meeting, but we're asking that we hold off until we can have them in person if at all possible, because it is taking up a lot of staff time.
And when do we anticipate that might be? Next year?
Yeah, well, that's up to county public health and the state when we can meet in person again.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
I have some.
Councilmember Figueroa, sir, go ahead, and then Councilmember Ibarra.
Thank you. This is just a friendly reminder to the council that we're coming up to the 5-year anniversary to the December 2nd. And so, you know, I'm not asking for anything immediately, but just let's have that on our radar, please. Perhaps maybe we can even use some of the funding from item number 11 to at least start the planning process on that as well. But just a friendly reminder, we are coming up to the 5-year anniversary of December 2nd.
Actually, council member, you had asked us to look into that. We've got an analyst in the Public Works Department, and we also had another group reach out to us wanting to assist with that. So we're working on that.
That's great to hear. Thank you, Terry.
Council member Ibarra, go ahead.
Yes, so I received an email today actually from our Supervisor Rao's office to support the Santa Ana River Trails ATP grant application. And our city manager is going to send information to our council, but if we can look into this project, I think it's going to be great to support it. I just wanted to bring it up publicly. If we're going to write a letter of support so that the public knows of this grant opportunity coming up. And then the last thing I have one more, but you can come back to me, Mayor. Sorry.
No, I think we're done. If there's no more, go ahead, Councilmember Ibarra. Go ahead.
Trying to find my notes. And then if we can also look into AB 1436 that Gretel mentioned earlier, if there is a way that we can actually send a letter to our state legislators to support it, to make sure that they extend the eviction moratorium, that'd be awesome as well. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, council member. Yes, council member Richard. Yes.
I just want to make a just to say that thank you to Terry. Terry sent out email to all the council members, all the council members about San Bernardino, the city of San Bernardino coming up with something where we need to talk and become united in regards to racism, a public health crisis. And I just want everybody to reply to her email, and let's come to a consensus. And if we need to bring it to a committee, let's bring it to a committee. But I think that that's something that is very important that we need to talk about in our city, because that's something that we don't talk about often, but we need to talk about it. So there was an email that was sent out. Hopefully everybody replied, so that way we can move forward.
Thank you, council member. We appreciate that reminder. Thank you.
Yeah, just to clarify, I'm not sure it was clear, but this was to, I think, declare racism a public health crisis. Am I correct? Okay, just wanted to make sure everyone knows.
San Bernardino, to get behind the county of San Bernardino, where they passed a resolution or a proclamation regarding racism as a public health crisis.
All right.
And we'll talk about it further. I just wanted to remind you guys to reply to the email.
Thank you, council members. We had a great night tonight, a lot of discussion. We thank council members for all of your and staff and our public for their continued trust and patience with our city. This meeting at the request.
If I may, Mayor, real quick.
Go ahead.
Please.
Mayor.
I just want to offer my condolences.
Me too. I want to extend my condolences,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you.
A moment of silence.
Sure. Why don't we? Thank you very much. Thank you, Councilman Charette, Councilman Nickel, council members. Appreciate the cards and thank you. This meeting is adjourned in honor of my father, Gilbert Valdivia. Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.